button. I push the button.
I was just trying to work out what part of the world you think you're from, but
I don't know.
He doesn't.
neither do we, sadly.
It's a modern young person thing to say now. Button, a button.
Oh, okay.
Okay, cool.
All right. Hello, everyone. How are y'all?
Y'all.
We are. We're in. Well, Stephen and I are in San Pedro, California. Right now on the city of Los Angeles Harbor, or the Los Angeles Harbor, I guess. But we're actually in like Long Beach.
Yeah. Long Beach.
I guess technically, yeah, we're still in Los Angeles County. Yeah.
Yeah, Los Angeles County is basically everywhere.
Well, I mean, you don't have to really go that far. In fact, today when we go to Ballast Point, that's probably going to be in Orange County.
Oh,
maybe. I don't know. It's very close to the line because where I grew up,
we drove through Mojave. That's still.
That's a big county. Yeah,
that's huge. Yeah.
But Orange County is like right here because I grew up in Orange County. So, isn't that fascinating, everybody?
So fascinating.
It is.
I'm wondering where your studio is, actually.
It's in.
It looks like a place I've been to in Belarus. Very.
Oh, we forgot to move the statue.
Oh, should we move the statue?
Nah, let's not move the statue.
Well, here, let's. Is it heavy?
I don't know. I don't want to break it.
I'm not going to break it.
Okay.
Let me see.
Statue? What the hell?
What are we doing?
Oh my god! What the hell? It's the beer carrier. You could stick a beer on that, couldn't you? Oh my god!
A special guest.
Yeah. Very nice.
Well, let's not knock it over.
Very nice.
Oh, you know what?
I'm impressed.
We got to get some more contrast with the door closed.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
We are in the dining room of this house built in
1893?
1916.
Oh, 1916.
I think.
Well,
That's what that thing said over there.
So,
We'll go look at it.
I'll go look at it.
Is that the maid that you've got
Yes.
there? Careful, steady.
1887.
Whoa, he was right. 1887 when the house was built.
Wow.
There you go. That is old.
Yeah. It's been here for a while. It's very nice. Very eclectic, but I like it.
You got 1887 wire routing for the television as well.
Yes.
And 1887 blue paneling. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting colors, but I like it. It's
But a nice picture rail. They're not common. That's good.
Yeah. And then that's where we watched our television last night. Yeah. What else to say? Okay, let me get this thing going because we do have a meetup to attend later on, and I don't want to get too far behind.
Just so you know, your light could be twisted just a tiny bit because it's cast a shadow on the edge of your screen.
Yeah. On what
Is that
would be your right
That's
side?
the
Jeff.
light from the window, the sunshine coming in.
Forget it.
Oh, gotcha.
We don't have any light.
Well, we
Okay.
do. We can actually turn that down if you want to.
Well, I don't. Okay, you can do that, but I don't think that's the shadow that they're seeing.
Oh, yeah. That's
Other side. That
There.
side.
That's the shadow from the
the thing.
From the shades?
armoire. The armoire.
the armoire.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Ah. Very nice.
Yeah.
If you don't want me in there, it's okay.
Wait a minute. I'm trying to figure out how to. Oh, look what we've done now. That's
Look
fine.
at
Oh,
that.
that's fine. That's much better.
Okay.
Look at that.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I don't
Very
want
nice.
to cover up our statue over here.
No, you're fine.
Special
She's
guest.
good. She's good.
Okay.
By the way, I had a look at your palm. You don't have a very long lifeline. I'm a bit worried about you, Jeff.
Wow.
How did you see my palm?
Because
You just stuffed it in front. Oh, no. Stephen will live a lot longer than you. That's all I can tell you. But for a full
Well,
reading, I am available.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind. All right. Well, hello, everybody in the chat room. I'm hoping that this will be a good show, and fingers crossed and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Stacy. All right, let's see here. We're recording, and I need to get the Evernote up. That's what she said. And move that over here so I can see.
You might want to change that so you don't.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, because he's
Soul.
Well, not Soul, but just his home studio. I don't think Rick would want to live in Korea.
Oh yeah, no, you're right.
I don't know. He might. I don't know.
No.
Seoul.
Pretty place, but not.
His mobile studio or mobile. Here we go. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we'll skip. I'm going to do this, kind of grade that out a little bit so I don't accidentally read it. Here we go. Okay. I think. Liz, you okay? Ready to go? All right. Looks like 11:37. All right, here we go.
I was about to say,
Okay.
we were confused because we were listening to the NTSB earlier, and they all had the same timer notification. So we all kept
the
thinking
alarm
it was
goes
our
off.
phone.
In the back channel, I heard Liz's telephone alarm going off. Okay, and by the way, for those of you in the chat room, if you don't mind, could you retweet the link to the show, and then we might get some more visitors, perhaps. Just put airlinepilotguy.com/YouTube, and then people can go from there. Oh, thanks, Liz. But all these fine people in the chat room can do it too, and expand an even greater audience. What's going on? Oh,
The Express should actually send out further letters today.
oh,
Oops.
yikes.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh well, that's okay.
Are we ready? All right, here we go.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG, it's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy episode 434.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy show, the view from our side of the cockpit door, with your host, Captain Jeff, broadcasting live from Studio 4L at an Airbnb in San Pedro, California. Today's show is recorded on the 15th of July, 2020.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. Put your light and it's flying by. With the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, Iran blames human error for the shooting down of a Ukrainian flight in January. In Greece, investigators say a passenger jet came dangerously close to a helicopter because the plane's two pilots operated the controls at the same time. More news, your feedback, and in today's Plane Tales, who killed Yogi Bear? So get all settled in, tray tables and seat backs in the upright and locked positions, electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger, and Flight 434 is ready for pushback.
Thank you, Radio Roger. He's an Emmy award-winning TV and radio reporter, currently at the #1 all-news station in the nation, 1010 Wins, New York City. Welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. I'm Captain Jeff, an airline captain for a major legacy carrier based here in Atlanta. Well, not here, in Atlanta, Georgia. And I am joined today by my awesome co-hosts. Let's start off. Woo, that's loud. Let me turn that volume down a bit.
Why would you? That's a good tune.
Wait a minute. Now, why am I hearing Rick over there? Huh. Well, that's no good. Something is wrong. Piping, audio piping. Say something, Rick.
Hello?
Yeah.
Why did it keeps kicking it out?
I don't know. Sorry, guys. Should be... here we go. That's it. We figured it out.
Okay.
One of the tiles in Audio Hijack was on, and it's not supposed to be. Say something again. Okay, now I'd hear you just in our ears, earbuds. All right. Why don't we? I'm just going to go right into the jet airliner and bring Rick in. From his mobile studio in Seoul, Korea, world traveler, airplane mechanic, Breitling cognoscenti, fitness hound, and international air freight captain. It's Miami Rick.
Hello, everybody. Coming at you from the future. Actually, it's Thursday over here.
Oh well, how's
seen things?
Thursday?
I've seen things you guys haven't seen yet, and I can't say much, but it's a good one.
We need him to take a look at the lottery.
Yeah, I know. It's all out.
It doesn't work that way though, does it?
Nope. Unfortunately not.
I wish, yeah.
Oops. All right. Now it's time to introduce another co-host. His from his studio in the English countryside, professional photographer, former RAF RAAF fighter pilot, retired captain for an international airline based in London. It's Captain Nick.
Well, good evening, gentlemen. Lovely to be back on the show again. Where's the lady?
Well, I guess she's still doing that thing they call work.
Work.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's going to be joining us in progress, hopefully within the hour, we're hoping. And also joining us in our mobile studio in San Pedro, California. He's an Acme junior pilot, a craft brew junkie, a train addict, and all-around great guy, Captain Stephen Ivey.
Hey, well, I wish. Good to see everybody again.
Great to have you with me again, and we'll talk in the segment where we get all caught up with stuff. What's been going on with us for the last 10 days now? I think.
10 days, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. But before we do that, let's talk about some news.
Stand by for news.
Okay. First item in our news notebook is this. This happened in it was just this year. It seems like it was long ago.
That's not
On January 8th, 2020.
okay. Yeah.
737. Let's see. It was a Ukrainian Airlines 737 taking off from Tehran. Was shot down by 2 missiles. On July 12th, 2020, Iran's AIB released another updated interim report, both in Persian and English. And they, let's see, let me read a little bit here of their report. After the relocation of one of the air defense units of Tehran, clearly causing a change in its heading, a failure occurred due to human error and following the procedure of system north alignment. As a result, a 107-degree error was induced into the system. As such, while the flight 752, what was the airline again? Was it Ukrainian Air?
Ukrainian International?
Yeah, Ukraine International.
Okay. So let's see. While the Flight 752 aircraft was flying, the direction of objects and targets detected by the system was being observed with an increase of 107 degrees by the operator. Such a functional failure initiated a hazard chain, which of course could be controlled providing other planned measures are implemented. They weren't. At 2:43:56, the air defense unit operator detected a target at his 250-degree azimuth, flying a 52-52-degree course. At the same time, after takeoff, the Ukrainian 752 had been flying towards the defense system from a 143-degree azimuth. The aircraft was passing the 309-degree course. About 25 seconds or so later, the operator notified the specifications of the detected target to the coordination center over the communication network. The target was, in fact, the very Flight 752 departing from IKA, detected by the system as a target approaching Tehran from approximately the southwest, although they were not, actually, because of that 107-degree error. The recorded information indicates that the mentioned defense systems notification was not communicated successfully. Another link in the chain of events was formed at this point. They're using the metaphor of the chain
Swiss cheese.
and breaking. No,
Oh,
it's like Swiss cheese, except it doesn't taste as good. It's a chain.
okay.
Yeah, and
So it's metallic.
it's very metallic tasting.
Yeah, that tastes
Let's
good.
see another metaphor to use for safety. So if you have a chain and everything is unbroken, then everything's going to be okay. But then sometimes you have little places where the chain is weakened or actually broken.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The system operator began analyzing the observable information and categorized the detected target as a threat, although the likelihood of identifying the target for a threat was considerably raised due to his lack of awareness of the 107-degree error. Yet, still at this point, if he had identified the target as a passenger aircraft, the missile would not have been launched. The wrong identification is another link in the chain of events. At 2:44:41, without receiving any response from the coordination center, the air defense unit operator fired a missile at the threatening target he had detected. Under the applicable procedures, if the defense system operator cannot establish communication with the coordination center and does not receive the fire command, they are not authorized to fire. This measure had been planned as another error prevention layer, which was not implemented either. The fourth link leading to the firing of the missile was now formed. I guess they're kind of changing my metaphor a little bit. They're actually creating links,
Yes.
not deleting them. Oh, well. At the time
Well
of firing,
spotted.
Yeah.
Well spotted. I was going to mention it, but never mind.
Yeah, thinking, wait a minute, their metaphor is
Yeah,
revision.
you got to break the chain to avoid the accident.
Yeah, that's the way I learned it. But anyway, in Iran, they do things differently, I guess. Yeah. So where was I here? At 2:44. No.
I
At the
think you're
time
right,
of firing
right.
the first missile, the aircraft was flying at a normal altitude and trajectory. The aircraft ATC transponder and ADSB signals were received properly. The missile radio fuse was activated when the aircraft had reached the last position recorded by the dependent surveillance systems. The activation occurred at 2:44:59. At 2:44:58, so like 1 second before, the last information received from the aircraft included the secondary surveillance radar, SSR transponder, and automatic dependent surveillance broadcast, ADSB, after which the receiving of such signals was terminated. This time corresponds to the first missile radio fuse activation. From then on, the aircraft position was only being recorded by the primary surveillance radar. So, believe it or not, it wasn't over. They actually ended up firing a second missile. The first missile, though, let's see, the evidence shows that at 2:46:11, a fire broke out on the aircraft, which was intensifying. At 2:48:23, the aircraft crashed into a playground near, in Kalajabad.
Kalajabad.
Oh,
What he
I should
said.
ask Rick. He's
Yeah.
probably been there. Well, no, of course you haven't.
No, I haven't been there.
Well, you've been in that area, but you've
Been
seen
next
the-
door to Iraq, though, but
Yeah.
I've been to Iran.
And it was near the what area, Rick?
Kalajabad.
Oh no, but that's near Shahada.
Shahada shower?
Let me see here. Oh, Shahada. Let me see.
Shahada.
Shahada Shar. Shahada Shar
Okay.
area. Yep.
An explosion occurred the moment the aircraft impacted the ground. The aircraft then kept hitting the ground and bouncing on a route towards the airport, making the aircraft pieces, victims' properties, objects, and body remains disintegrate completely in a vast area near a residential complex, recreational and sports park, gardens, and the surrounding agricultural land. This thing goes into a lot more detail about the missile and the fact that they think it ended up firing or exploding or whatever, detonating about 50 feet right underneath the cockpit area and sent out shrapnel.
Yeah, I think most anti-aircraft missiles are they're designed to do that. Sends out the shrapnel and
Mhm.
Yeah.
blows holes in the airplane.
That was what happened with Malaysian, that Malaysian 777. It was the exact same blast pattern. It's not actually direct impact, but it's got a proximity sensor, whereas it gets to a certain point, it just basically just blows up, and the shrapnel's what gets it.
It's kind
So,
of like a torpedo in the water. Where it gets close to the boat, it'll activate underneath it.
Oh yeah, I remember when I used to be in the submarine and we shoot those torpedoes. Yeah.
The silent service, huh?
Yeah. So I would imagine
that's why he doesn't talk about it a lot, Rick.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Liz is saying something. Whoops. Okay. I'll have to keep that in the
Yeah,
show.
we'll have to keep
Yeah,
that.
you're
Yeah.
going to be in the show, Liz. Nick, you're the only one here who has experience with weapons such as these missiles that were fired. I know that the airplane launched missiles are probably a little bit different, but do they work in much the same way, or do they like explode or detonate near the target, or do they actually hit the target, or both?
There are some that are designed as hit isles. So the early Rapier system that the British Aerospace built, we used it in our airfield defense systems, were basically kinetic missiles that were designed to strike and destroy, but you had to hit the aircraft. Most missiles have a warhead, and because you've got a blast radius of a warhead of X feet, depending on its size and whether it's a shrapnel or it's an expanding rod style of a destruction device, then so long as the missile gets within the diameter or the parameters of that warhead, that's all it needs. So it'll have a contact fuse, it'll have a proximity fuse, it'll have various ways of detonating as it goes past. But the idea is that, it doesn't take much, really. If you've got a high-speed missile, it doesn't take a huge amount of explosive to spread shrapnel out. And, of course, the velocity of the shrapnel hitting something as delicate as an aircraft, it'll just go straight through the skin and hit vital components, and away you go. Pilots, of course, being some of the vital components.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was surprised at how small those little pieces of shrapnel were. I mean, they were not even not even a centimeter in dimension, in a couple of the dimensions. Very tiny.
Yeah, if it's a decent missile system, it'll be coming at it quite fast. So I guess the total kinetic energy it imparts is proportional. And some missiles are obviously better than others. The old Russian missiles used to be huge and have huge warheads because they weren't very well guided. The more precise the guidance, the closer it can afford to get, the smaller the warhead, actually, so that it travels faster and is more effective. But a radar-guided missile can be any aspect, and it sounds like this was a radar-guided missile. Heat seekers will tend to home in on warm spots, not just the engines. You can get enough heat usually from the airframe nowadays, and of course some infrared-guided missiles actually use a matrix. Imagine a camera and all the pixels there. You can fit that inside a missile. And some of them are sophisticated enough to actually look at the image of the aircraft that it's homing in on and decide whether it's enemy or friendly. Some of them are that clever.
Oh, wow.
What surprises me about this system is that the aircraft obviously had its transponder going and was even broadcasting ADS-B, but the missile operator didn't have that information on his scope. So there's a huge disconnect there. I mean, the aircraft's transmitting something that will identify it, and the guy with the deadly system isn't able to receive it or isn't using it. I mean, what's that about?
They might not have that technology just due to embargoes and everything on Iran. It might be an older system, from.
Well, it's usually it's a defense against shooting down your own aircraft. So everybody has that kind of a system. Just about.
Well, you would hope they would.
Otherwise, you end up gauging your own air force. by accident, which is
Yeah.
kind of stupid.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna ask Nick as well, because I mean, what's the point of IFF? You know, identify friend or foe if you can't use it, and that AEDSB.
Exactly right.
No,
I've
that
no
AEDSB
idea why it wasn't integrated into the missile operator system. Perhaps he relied on his chain of command to identify the aircraft for him and just told him what to shoot at. And when that broke
Yeah,
down,
except he didn't get any
yeah,
response.
exactly. And when that,
And,
when that chain
maybe
of command broke down, yeah, then he
it
just
could be too. Since his azimuth was off, it might have the readout might not be the same because he was looking in the wrong area. So it's not going to give him the readouts he was expecting. Maybe it was like a setting issue because of that.
I can see that the geometry of the approaching aircraft was wrong because they hadn't recalibrated the screen to north. It was still on its previous, the setting at its previous location. But that shouldn't affect what the target emits as the way of identifying signals. So,
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that if that were actually the case, what you just said, they probably would have mentioned it in the in the report.
That's true.
Anyway, a whole bunch of breakdowns and procedures and communications.
I'll tell you what really surprises me, actually, is that Iran is putting up its hand and saying we made a fatal mistake and shot down a civil airliner, and they're more or less explaining how the mistake happened, and they're being surprisingly open about it. That does surprise me.
That is surprising. That really is surprising.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's still an updated preliminary report. So hopefully it sounds like they're being very transparent about this. We'll get to actually see the final report at some point, hopefully soon. Anything else to say before we move on?
No.
All right, we're done.
This is from flightglobal.com. Dual control inputs from a Condor Airbus A320's pilots badly obstructed its response to collision avoidance orders during a low-altitude conflict, investigators have determined. The incident culminated in a serious air proximity encounter and a terrain alert shortly after departure from Kavala, I don't know, Kavala maybe?
Sure.
Airport in Greece. Kavala, okay. And this happened in 2018 on the 16th of August. After the aircraft lifted off from the runway 23 left, bound for Munich, it turned right over the coast to head for the Xeris 1C northwest outbound track. The A320 was cleared to climb to 24,000 feet, but the first officer who was flying saw a conflicting aircraft, a Hughes 369 HS helicopter, on the collision avoidance system display immediately after the turn, and both pilots tried to establish visual contact. As the aircraft climbed through 2635 feet, still approaching the shoreline, the collision avoidance system instructed the crew to maintain its 1,800 foot per minute vertical speed. But, and here's the problem, the first officer did not follow this instruction, and that's a very dangerous thing. It says the Greek Transport Ministry's investigation authority, instead commanding nose down and reducing the climb rate to 1,100 feet per minute. This rate continued to decline to 500 feet per minute. As the aircraft passed 2,730 feet, the collision avoidance system reversed its instruction and ordered the crew to descend. The first officer initially responded with a nose up input. Oops, no, it doesn't work that way. Before quickly switching to nose down, at which point the captain also applied nose down input without first following the procedure to take over control. That's important. You have to, if you're going to activate the controls, you have to let the other person know that you are taking over control. As a result, says the inquiry, the first officer did not realize the aircraft was responding to dual command inputs. Yeah, it's very important in an Airbus, right, Nick? When you have,
if both of you do something with the stick, the control inputs are summed, so that if you push forward and he pulls back, they're summed. You get a positive against a negative, nothing happens. If you both push forward, it will give you twice the amount of input that you expected because you're summing nose forward, which is why it's vital that you decide who's in control of the airplane. And if there's any doubt, there's a big red button on top of the stick. As soon as you press that, it cuts out the stick on the other side of the cockpit. And it's pretty obvious when you're both putting control puts input, because a big loud voice shouts dual input, and the arrows go in which way. So this is just one of many mistakes, which indicates to me that the training in this company, or the training that was being displayed here, was really not of a high standard.
I mean, I tell you, and on the Boeing side of things, we don't have any, fancy buttons or sticks or anything like that. You have this big, yoke in front of you, and you can see exactly what the guy next to you is doing, and that's nice. Obviously, if you see that he's pushing down, you first smack him upside the head, and take controls. And it's
not that
easy enough.
Rick. We're going to see an incident very shortly where a bloke stalled the aircraft, and the guy beside him said he had no idea what the guy was doing, and that was in a conventional yoked control system. So
but I know,
Yeah,
but you can see what I'm talking about here is that both the autopilot and flying manually, you can see which way the yoke is going, not so much in an Airbus.
If you're paying attention to it. If you're paying attention to it, yeah. But
Exactly.
there are plenty of accidents where people have even fought over the controls. And
Absolutely. And the controls are designed to break free one from another if one of them gets jammed. Absolutely right. But
so what I'm saying is, I don't want to go into the pros and cons of side sticks, because we've discussed that many times.
Mhm.
Let's do it again.
It works fine if you know how to fly your airplane. That's the problem here, not the airplane.
And we
the
all
guys
know
who
that
are flying it.
all of our training, regardless of what kind of airplane you're flying, when you have a TCAS system installed and it's telling you to do something, it is critical that you follow what it's telling you, because it's also talking possibly to the other aircraft, and they were trusting are going to follow the commands that they're given, and there's going to be a nice, safe resolution.
Right, that's what TCAS. I mean, the TCAS traffic collision avoidance system. They talk to each other, so they have to. I mean, one system coordinates with the other system, and if you're commanded a climb, then the other system's commanding a descent to the other crew to keep you away from each other. And this is something that we practice in simulators all the time. It's the procedure itself. It's straightforward enough where you disconnect the autopilot, disconnect the auto throttle, you take manual control of the airplane. And all you do is you're going to have the symbology show up in your primary flight display or attitude direction indicator, whatever it is, or sometimes on the older systems just on your vertical speed indicator, your VSI. And the idea is to keep your position or your vertical speed needle out of the red area and into the green area. It's just simple as that. You just keep it there, and that is going to guarantee to keep you away from the other conflicting aircraft, because whatever you're doing, the other guy's doing the opposite of what you're doing. So,
and it's easy to interpret in the Airbus, because it's demanding a rate of climb and descent, and there on the rate of decline and descent indicator on the side of the flight director screen, there is your needle, and that's where the color change occurs. So you basically just put your RCDI needle into the green. And it's just so simple to interpret. So I don't know.
I have a question for Nick. So you're getting the TCAS system using the speakers to warn you of traffic and directing you to monitor vertical speed or increase the rate of climb or descent. We all know that voice. The oral alert with the dual input, would you also hear that at the same time, or would one of those be muted?
I don't think they're muted. I don't know if they're sequenced or whether one on top of the other, because I've never been in that situation. Never had to ask that question. They may have a priority. But
I've been in situations in the simulator where, one system, normally you would hear an oral alert for whatever's happening, but then another system is also at the same time putting out an oral alert, and there are, I guess, priorities involved with what you hear and what you don't.
Yeah, my gut feeling tells me that you would hear them both.
Okay,
but it may be that you would. I mean, they obviously don't blare out constantly. Certainly a TCAS, it gives you warning, then there's a gap, and it might be in that gap that you get the other warnings. But I suspect you'd hear them both, and it would be just like two people shouting at you. You'd be able to work out what they're saying,
Yeah.
but it's not quite as
I have that
clear.
happen to me all the time. People yelling at me, at least 2 or 3 at a time.
And Al's asking if do any of the Boeings do an auto TCAS avoidance? And no, on Boeing airplanes, the TCAS avoidance is a manual maneuver, strictly manual maneuver, and that's
Same thing on the McDonnell Douglas.
Yeah, the way you go is autopilot, auto throttle, and just manually fly the maneuver until you're clear of conflict. Then you re-automate.
I was just going to add one more thing. This could all be prevented too if you just follow your SOPM and do positive exchange of controls. That would help avoid a lot of these issues with TCAS and dual inputs and other incidents too, I'm sure.
Other situations where it's vitally important that if somebody is taking control, like the captain, that he announces
that he's taking control.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very important.
Absolutely.
Or you could go with Dana's practice and just carry your baseball bat and knock the guy out too.
Does he take does he carry a full-size baseball bat?
I don't think so. He said it's like one of those mini ones.
Collapsible. Okay.
Yeah, collapsible, like a battalion.
Yeah.
You can fit in your flight bag.
I flew with Dana, when he was a first officer, and I don't recall ever seeing the baseball. I must have been doing okay. He didn't have to hit me. Anyway, so I guess we should continue with the story, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, basically, they didn't hit the helicopter. Well, no, there's actually much more to this here. Let's see. Okay,
I think you're right there.
After, as Nick mentioned, Airbus flight control logic sums dual inputs from the pilot side sticks, and this increased the A320's descent rate because they were both pushing down or forward. The first officer then attempted to reduce the nose down attitude because he believed the intruding helicopter was beneath the A320, and because being unaware of the captain's inputs, he was also confused by the aircraft's response to his side stick. And with the aircraft at 2,763 feet, the helicopter at 2,869, so the helicopter was actually above them. The collision avoidance system ordered an increased rate of descent. The first officer again initially gave a nose up command, followed by a nose down, while the captain applied a nose down.
This guy was a pilot, wasn't he?
I'm not sure.
What it
Well,
says.
we're going to find out in another story in the news notebook here that doesn't always guarantee the guy sitting in a seat in an airliner doesn't always guarantee that they are good at it.
Mm-hmm.
The combined nose down inputs of the pilots generated a high negative G load, prompting the first officer to react with a nose up command. At their closest point, the two aircraft were separated by 208 feet vertically. That's close. And less than 550 feet horizontally. That's very, very close. Weather conditions were good at the time. Neither pilot recalled whether the aircraft's automated systems signaled a dual input warning. The overall average result of the summed inputs from the pilot's commands had led the aircraft to descend, but as it neared 2,400 feet, the pilots received a terrain caution indicator from the ground proximity warning system because the jet was losing height as it neared a mountain ridge rising to 3,000 feet. Yikes. According to the captain's testimony, he immediately declared that he was taking control of the aircraft. Should have done that before. Engaged go around thrust and pitched the aircraft 11 degrees nose up. Within a few seconds of the terrain caution, there were no further inputs from the first officer. Investigators state that the helicopter pilot had not complied with its authorized altitude of 2,500 feet. But they point out that the first officer's response to the collision avoidance system was not in accordance with its instructions and says the captain's unexpected intervention complicated the situation. Condor should underline to pilots the importance of following the correct procedure for taking over control, the inquiry recommends.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
Simple as that.
I've never thought of Condor as a fly-by-night operation. I've always considered them to be on a par with Lufthansa. They're well recognized and usually they have a great reputation. This really surprises me. This incident, I'm quite taken aback by it.
Me too. All right. Well, we can all learn from that, right? C. An incident this is from the Aviation Herald. An ERA or ERA?
It's ERA Alaska.
ERA?
Yeah, which is Raven, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, Raven Airlines.
DH-8A -8 near Anchorage. This is all the way back in September of 2012. An uncommanded left roll and loss of altitude. Let's see. They were performing flight 874 from Anchorage to Homer with 12 passengers and 3 crew, climbing through 12,000 feet out of Anchorage when the aircraft entered an uncommanded roll to the left and began to lose altitude. The crew was able to regain control of the aircraft about 7,000 feet and return to Anchorage for a safe landing about 40 minutes after departure. The NTSB reported the incident occurred in instrument meteorological conditions. In other words, they were in the clouds. An investigation has been opened. On July 9th, 2020, so not too long ago, the NTSB released their final report concerning the probable cause of the incident was an in-flight loss of control due to the flight crew's inattention to airspeed, pitch, attitude, and engine power. All the control instruments here during the climb, leading to an aerodynamic stall. Actually, I should correct myself here. Let me get back up again. Above 50%. Not all of those things are control. Airspeed is not. That's a performance instrument, but pitch, attitude, and engine power are control. Contributing to the incident was the flight crew's failure to recognize and properly recover from an aerodynamic stall in a timely manner. So first of all, they start off by the NTSB kind of spanks them a little bit, complaining that the cockpit voice recorder present on board the aircraft did not comply with the regulations requiring 2 hours of recording. The FAA had been unaware of this. Well, obviously they were aware that it has to have 2 hours. It's just they were unaware that this airplane didn't have that capability. The lack of CVR recording impaired the investigation and did not permit to determine whether the stick shaker had activated during the event, as the flight data recorder did not record that parameter of stick shaker activation. The crew reported the stick shaker did not activate during the event. The sequence of events, so hang on, folks. It's going to be a bumpy ride. During the climb to 10,000 feet, flight data recorder data showed, oh, that's kind of a FDR, flight data recorder data show that the flight maintained about 90% torque and 150 knots, which was consistent with company procedures. The captain stated the airplane encountered icing conditions between 7,000 and 8,000 feet, at which time he turned on all of the de-icing equipment, which both flight crew members stated was working properly. When the captain leveled the airplane at 10,000 feet, the planned cruise altitude, he reduced power from a climb setting of 90% of maximum torque to about 70% of maximum torque. At the time, the indicated airspeed was 170 knots. Shortly thereafter, the flight crew requested and received a clearance from ATC to maintain a block altitude of 10 to 14,000 feet to avoid continued icing conditions. The captain stated that he did not adjust the power when he began the climb, which is odd, which flight data recorder data confirmed. The captain believed he engaged the indicated airspeed mode of the autopilot when he began the climb. However, if the captain had used the IAS, indicated airspeed mode, at the reduced power setting, the airplane would likely not have climbed. Yeah, right?
Yep.
In IAS, you push the power up and it starts climbing. Yep. You pull it back, starts descending. Okay. Trying to maintain what we call that called speed on pitch instead of speed on power, right? Or there's something.
The first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying in this case it was as opposed to. Yeah. Okay. Both pilots stated in interviews that climbing in the vertical speed mode of the autopilot was not, if the autopilot was engaged, is not recommended, and they did not recall selecting the autopilot vertical speed mode. Specifically, the Aviation Flight Operations Training Procedures, FOTP, stated that the pamphlet? They only get a pamphlet?
Wow. No wonder. Priest. It's the Flight Operations Training Priest.
Oh. Yeah. Okay. Does he have to travel with them at the time, or does... Oh, okay.
Nobody blesses them before they get over.
Okay, good. That guy stated that the vertical speed mode should not be used for sustained climb if the autopilot was engaged, since the airspeed was not protected and a stall may occur. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're not a pilot, maybe, but if you're a pilot, you should be aware of all these
speed.
Yeah. Get off the soapbox, right?
No, Dad, I'm going to jump on it in a second.
Okay.
Join you there.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
here,
I
let me
think I
make
am
some room
too.
for you. It's a big soapbox we use here at the APG. Let's see. Despite this guidance, the flight crew's apparent awareness of it, data showed that the flight began a steady climb of 850 feet per minute, which was consistent with the captain selecting the vertical speed mode. Because the airplane began to climb steadily without the addition of power, yeah, because you're telling it to, right? The pitch attitude began to increase and the indicated airspeed began to decrease. Recorded data showed that over the same interval, the airplane pitch attitude increased from 3 degrees airplane nose up at 10,000 feet to 14 degrees, wow, airplane nose up at 12,000 feet, and that the airspeed decreased from 170 to 103 knots, the speed at which the airplane stalled. Wow, that's a 14 degrees. I don't know. I've never flown the Dash 8, but that seems like a lot of pitch.
I mean, I think anybody would say that 14 degrees, you're going to notice that pretty quickly, I think. I mean,
well, you should.
Yeah. Well, yeah, should.
As noted previously, in addition to airspeed indicators, orange speed control indicators providing fast-slow indications were installed in the captain's and first officer's ADIs on the instrument panel directly in front of both pilots. The speed control indicators depicted airspeed relative to 1.3 V stall and would have moved into the slow region of the indicator as the airspeed dropped below 116 knots. Given that the pitch attitude is a primary control indication and airspeed is a primary performance indication, both pilots, the pilot flying and the pilot monitoring, should have been cross-checking, that is, continuously and logically observing the instruments for attitude and performance information. Yes, that's what pilots do. Both indications frequently. However, both pilots reported they were not aware of the changes in pitch attitude or airspeed. What are they looking at? What's going on here?
Let me look out the window at the cloud.
Oh, look, it's pretty.
Oh, wow.
It looks like a
Have
big
you
bear.
read this in the newspaper? Good Lord, have you seen what the president's done again?
Oh, I know. Here, let me look at that. Here, none of us look at the instruments and see what's going on with the airplane. The captain stated that during the climb out of 10,000 feet, he was monitoring the icing situation outside the airplane. He described the icing conditions as, quote, the high end of moderate, and he stated that they needed to avoid those conditions to continue the flight. When the airplane began to break out of the clouds at an altitude about 11,500 feet, the captain decided to level off at 12,000, and he began monitoring the autopilot as it captured that altitude. He stated that he thought the airspeed was 150 to 160 knots, but he did not recall looking at the airspeed indicator or the fast-slow indication on the ADI. What are we looking at, Captain?
Mhm.
The first officer stated that normally the pilot flying would specify the climb speed, but he did not recall if the captain did so, and he could not remember what the airspeed was in the climb. He said he was busy taking care of paperwork and charts, preparing to communicate with the destination station, looking outside, focusing on the icing conditions, making sure the de-ice boots were inflating, and seeing whether the airplane was shedding ice or not. As the pilot monitoring, the first officer was responsible for watching the primary instrument indications and ensuring that the airplane was maintaining the appropriate climb airspeed. However, he stated that he could not recall what the indications were on the instrument panel before the stall, but that he thought that the airspeed was about 150 knots before the upset. He was wrong. The pilots allowed the airspeed to drop to stall speed because the captain failed to set climb power when he inappropriately selected the autopilot vertical speed mode for climb, and both pilots were preoccupied with other duties and were not watching their airspeed or attitude indicators during the climb. So we move on now to the airplane stalling. As the airplane began to level off at 12, the airplane began to shudder. The flight crew stated that they attributed the shudder to an unbalanced condition of the propellers due to uneven ice shedding. Both pilots stated that they had experienced similar ice shedding on their previous flight. Neither pilot associated the vibrations they felt as an approach to an aerodynamic stall. Flight data recorder data indicated that the airplane was experiencing an aerodynamic pre-stall buffet. However, neither pilot recognized the buffet as an indication that the airplane was about to stall. No recorded data was available to confirm a stall warning, but according to the pilots, the stick shaker did not activate at the time the airplane began to lose lift, which, according to FDR data, the airplane performance study occurred at 10:48:18 as the airplane was climbing through 12,192 feet at 103 knots. Flight data recorder showed the control column moving aft from 3 degrees to 8.5, beginning at the time of the loss of lift, consistent with the autopilot control. This was followed by autopilot disconnection and continued rapid aft movement of the control column to 33 degrees within the next 3 seconds. They obviously thought they were in some kind of a fighter aircraft. 33 degrees?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Aerodynamic stall recovery requires the pilot to reduce the airplane's angle of attack by pushing the nose down so that the proper airflow across the wing and control surfaces can be restored. Therefore, the captain's aft movement of the control column was an inappropriate response to the stall and impeded its recovery.
Very polite.
Yes, he really mucked, and you can substitute that with any consonant you'd like. They really mucked it up. The flight data recorder also showed the airplane began a left roll 5 seconds after the initial loss of lift, and then the roll coincided with the autopilot disconnection. Following the left roll, pitch decreased from 20 degrees nose up to 37 degrees nose down. It must have been quite a ride for those passengers. The captain stated that he attempted to control the airplane by rolling it to wings level, pulling the nose up, but he was unable to regain control. Yeah, because the airplane's not flying. The wings don't have any flow. Flight data recorder data indicated the captain held the control column aft to more than 33 degrees for 16 seconds during the descent, and that he did not attempt to push the nose over for another 7 seconds after relieving back pressure. The captain stated that during the descent, he made a combination of control and power inputs, pushing the yoke and power forward and back.
Do some of that pilot shit.
Yeah.
Push the buttons, pull the levers.
Maybe this will work. The captain's statements were confirmed by flight data recorder data. Following the initial roll, engine torque on both engines decreased to about 30%. So the response to the stall was to pull the power back. And subsequently increased to over 100% twice, exceeding the torque limitations on the engines. The captain stated he did not recall seeing any speed during the event, as he never once looked at the airspeed indicator.
Oh boy.
As the airspeed increased above 160 knots during the descent, pitch began to increase and the airplane leveled off at an altitude of about 7,072 feet. Oh, well, we can continue on, but this is pretty painful.
Wow.
So here, in summary, the captain's response to the aerodynamic stall delayed the recovery of the airplane. Right.
Yes.
Pulling back on the column and reducing engine power kept the airplane from achieving the necessary angle of attack for airflow and lift to be restored. Yes. Without awareness of the airplane's airspeed and pitch attitude as the airplane approached the stall, the captain did not recognize the pre-stall buffet when it occurred. Once the aircraft was fully stalled, he held inappropriate nose-up pitch control, reduced power actions which exacerbated the stall and contributed to the flight's significant altitude loss. The first officer stated that when the airplane pitched over, his hands were not on the controls and he did not know what control inputs the captain made. Okay, here's an example of a conventional yoke, and he was not aware of what control inputs the captain's making. I don't know what he's looking at or whether he increased or decreased power. He said he first thought they should get the nose down, but then thought if they had a tail icing event, that pushing forward would be wrong. The first officer stated in subsequent interviews that he did not think they had tail icing, but his initial confusion about whether the flight was experiencing an aerodynamic stall or a tail stall may have caused him to hesitate in responding. When asked, as pilot monitoring, what instrument he should monitor to assist the pilot flying in recovering from a stall, he replied, airspeed, but he could not recall what the airspeed was during the event. He also could not recall the position of the fast-slow speed control indicator. As the pilot monitoring, the first officer could have called out airspeed and the position of the fast-slow speed control indicator, and he could have directed the captain to apply and maintain nose-down pitch to aid in the stall recovery. However, the first officer was surprised by the airplane's loss of control and did not provide any useful assistance to the captain during the recovery. Very nice.
Wow.
Okay.
I'm glad they had the altitude to do this. I mean,
oh, no kidding. Yeah,
you're quite right, Rick. 5,000 feet they lost in that stall.
And that, good thing they had the altitude, and good thing that they didn't happen to run into any cumulus granites up there, because there's quite a bit of those up in Alaska. So they really lucked out here.
Well, I'm going to step off this or step aside and make room for Captain Nick to come up here on the soapbox.
This was all initiated by something I hated in my company, and it was frequently done, which was to use the autopilot climbing in vertical speed mode. And for an extended length of time, and often at very high altitudes when your performance is really quite small. Engine power, the thinness of the air, etc. You've really got to keep a very close eye, and people don't realize, but when you're in vertical speed mode, the autopilot will make the airplane climb at what you've asked it to, that vertical speed, and it will give away everything else. It'll give away your airspeed, as it did in this aircraft, to the point where the airplane stalls. And it was exacerbated in this case because the captain had left cruise power on. He hadn't pushed the throttles forward to give himself enough thrust. But even in our aircraft, admittedly, all the protections of the Airbus would stop you from stalling the airplane. It would have got to a really nasty situation, but it would never have actually stalled. But you'd never want to do that, because while you're watching everything that's going on, fine, but it only takes something to distract you, something that suddenly needs doing elsewhere. And because not much else is going on, you take your eyes off the flight instruments and you start attending to something else, even something as stupid as the cockpit door opening and the cabin crew coming in. Pretty girl with a nice cup of tea starts to engage you in conversation. And the next thing you know, the airplane is getting slower and slower and slower. And that's how you start getting in this position. So I didn't used to lose my cool, but I really used to try and encourage first officers that I flew with to not use this particular method of climbing the airplane. It has its time and place, but it's not something they would do commonly, although some, I don't know what kind of a background they came from where they were trained to do it, would use it incessantly. And it kind of used to get me. I said, it's all fine and beautiful while we're both paying attention, but it doesn't take much to distract us and end up in this kind of a situation. That's my soapbox.
No, it's true, and I agree with you, Nick. There, the vertical speed mode is a it's a valid mode of the automatic flight director system. That's why it's there. It's got a time and place to be used, and again, it's one of those modes where, if, like Nick just said, yeah, I mean, if you're not paying attention to it, it can really bite you. The thing with the vertical speed is, as we saw here, it really doesn't protect your speed, because like exactly what Nick said, it's you ask the plane to climb at a certain vertical speed velocity per minute, and that's what it's going to do. It doesn't protect you, doesn't protect the speed. Now, if you usually, the way vertical speed, or at least the way I use vertical speed sometimes, is in the terminal area, to make controlled descent of no more than 1,000 to 1,500 feet a minute, to make it a constant descent. Or sometimes I'll use it for a deceleration, for the deceleration portion of the flight. It comes in quite handy when you're coming in flight level change or open descent for airbuzz or clamp mode for the Mad Dogs there. Once you select that mode, the autopilot is going to select the pitch for that airspeed, right? And so if you select 250 knots, or if you select 300 knots and you press flight level change, the airplane's going to pitch to maintain the 300 knots. And so usually what I'll do is, once I'm at about 11,000 feet, I'll press vertical speed, select about a 300 or 200 foot a minute descent, and then dial the speed back to 250. And then the airplane's going to pitch up to give me that 200 foot a minute or 300 foot a minute descent. And then that levelish sector of the flight is going to bleed the airspeed quite rapidly to get to 250, and then I'll re-engage 250 flight level change to re-engage that mode of the autopilot and continue the descent at 250. So there's a time and a place for it. It's certainly not in the mid 30s to high 30s, certainly, because it's really at that point your thrust to weight, it's really not where you want it to be, because as Nick said, if you command 1,000 foot a minute climb, the engines are going to give it all they have, and that might not even be enough to give you the climb that you request. And so the airspeed is going to bleed, and we know what happens. We know how hard it is to recover that airspeed once you're up in the once you're up at altitude.
Yeah. No, good point. Get the wrong side of the drag curve, which is why we use this phrase so much. And you can't accelerate the airplane. There's not enough thrust left in the engine. So the only way to get back to a situation where you're above your min drag speed is to sacrifice altitude now.
You got to descend, exactly.
Yeah, which is really not what you want to do, because the passengers get upset because the champagne might spill. But you're right. There are cases when I would always use it. And one would be an initial climb out when you got more thrust than you really need. But you're approaching another aircraft that's above you, and you don't want to hurtle up to him at 2,500, 3,000 feet a minute, because you'll activate his TCAS warning.
Exactly right.
So
That's another reason why.
Select vertical speed, moderate your rate of climb, so that you climb and pass underneath him without any shouts from traffic, and getting everyone upset. So the time and the place, but this was not a time nor a place.
You have to be aware of when you are transitioning to that mode that you have lost some protections, and that's
exactly right.
what happened here. And I hypothetically remember a story that somebody told me about, maybe a good friend of mine, in a very large airplane, L-1011, where the captain was primary, or the pilot flying, and we were climbing out of Dallas Fort Worth heading to Los Angeles, avoiding thunderstorms, and he was head outside and maneuvering the airplane using the autopilot in vertical speed, and the auto throttles were basically commanding maximum climb thrust, and I was watching the airspeed, as pilot monitoring is supposed to, and I noticed that the airspeed, and I could just, if you've been flying these airplanes for a while, you can a good pilot can feel it without even looking at the instruments. You can sense when the energy of the airplane is something's not quite right. And I was looking at it and I'm thinking, yeah, this is not going to work, because if he continues to hold this kind of a pitch and climb rate, and now we're like transitioning to the low 30s, mid 30s, this is it's not going to be a good situation. And I mentioned it to the captain, saying, I mean, not me, my friend told me that he mentioned it to his captain that he needed to be careful because the airspeed was dropping off, and the captain acknowledged that fact, but really didn't make a big effort to adjust the vertical speed. And before this person had a chance to remind the captain one more time, he decided instead to make a radio call to Fort Worth Center and requested a lower altitude, because this person knew that the airplane was not going to be able to level off even at this energy state we had at this point, and we were going to be coming down whether we received clearance or not. Thankfully they did receive clearance from Fort Worth Center to go back down to flight level 310, or let's see, east or west is even flight level. Well, at that time that we didn't have RVSM, so I think 31 was what we were assigned, whatever it was, and we're going to have a lot of editing to do here. No, I'm just going to leave it all in. Yeah, of course, it was an experience.
Does he not listen to the show?
No. So that's an example. I mean, the entire time that Nick was talking about vertical speed and the fact that you have to be mindful of your airspeed and energy. I thought, oh yeah, that brought that person back to that day back in the 90s.
Yeah, and you know what? It works the other way as well, because if you are in the cruise portion of the flight and you command a vertical speed descent, the thrust levers are going to come back, but really what's going to command that vertical speed is your pitch. And so your speed's going to start creeping up, and it's very, very easy, if you're not paying attention, to get into that area of exactly
overspeed.
Get the clacker on the overspeed.
Overspeed.
So vertical speed is not a mode. It's not a mode that gives you any sort of protection on the high end of speed or the low end of speed. That's why you have to be on top of it when you're using it. So it's
But that's the mistake they used to kick this off. Having got to the position where he was barely over 100 knots and stalling, neither of them were monitoring their flight instruments. Neither of them had situational awareness of what the aircraft was doing. They were both distracted to the same problem. Are we getting a bit of icing on the wings here? It only needs one of you to look out. The other one flies the damned airplane, or he looks out and the other guy monitors the airplane. You don't.
I don't know about you, but
at the same time.
if I'm concerned about icing, I would be concerned about my airspeed, wouldn't you?
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like who's not? Why are you not looking and cross-checking your airspeed? That's just
And
crazy.
Rick hit the nail on the head. As you were, or actually, sorry, it was you, Jeff. As you approach a low speed situation, the hackles in the back of your neck start to go up because the noise has suddenly disappeared. It's gone very quiet. It's not normally this quiet. And if you're hand flying the airplane, the controls are suddenly getting sloppy. And there are so many indications, and then you get Buffett. Oh, geez, I would be going, whoa, let's do something about this. But
And of
they
course,
seem to be oblivious.
And of course, for all of us, if you're getting that big buffet, the normal reaction is to pull the power back and to yank back the yoke.
Exactly.
Push it real
That's,
good.
That's the opposite of what you're supposed to do.
Now, does anyone know this thing's got a T-tail, isn't it?
Yeah, the dash
is
shape.
it
Yeah.
super stall? Can it get into a deep stall?
I don't
Or
know.
does it have a stick pusher? Obviously not. Otherwise, the stick would have
No,
pushed.
it does.
Yeah,
They said they didn't think it
commercial,
activated,
yeah.
but I bet it did.
I had
Yeah.
it had a stick shaker, but
Oh,
I
that's
don't
right.
know
It
if-
does. Oh, yeah, that's
I
different.
don't know if it had a stick pusher as
No, I
well.
don't think it did.
Hey, if it's transport category, it's got to have a pusher, right?
Not unless there's certain parameters. I think that
Yeah.
maybe Rick knows
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
the-
not necessarily. It depends, but I don't believe this one does have I don't believe this one has a stick pusher. I don't.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Somebody maybe in the chat room knows it. I've never flown a turboprop, so I have no idea.
I haven't either.
And,
But I do want to say one thing. You know, we're talking about use of vertical speed, and we use it on a regular basis at my airline in almost every phase of flight because of certain performance reasons, especially like on the 200. Once you get above 20,000, and if you got anti-ice on, you can't leave it in climb and tell it to climb out because it'll keep leveling off the build up at speed, and you just can't maintain that 500-minute climb that ATC wants. So we use it for that. And then on the 7 and 900, the pressurization system can't keep up with the aircrafts. Once you get above, I believe it's 30, you got to put in vertical speed and keep it at 1,500 feet a minute. So we use it a pretty good bit. And I've lost track of time because you get the briefing something, and then the other guy usually will catch it, or I've done the same thing. But it's such a thing at my airline that we use it that if someone's doing something else, somebody's watching the airspeed to make sure that you don't get below the bug and get into that situation that these guys did. And I mean, that's really what it comes down to is somebody needs to keep their eye on what the aircraft's doing at all times.
Somebody's got to mind the store.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yep.
So it not only that he got himself into a stall and then didn't recognize it, and then did the completely appropriate actions, pulling the throttle back and pulling the stick back, just make the situation worse. And as Rick said earlier, he was so lucky he had the height to get out of this without hitting the ground. Otherwise, it would be a lesson we would still learn, but he wouldn't. I don't know if he's still flying again. Perhaps not.
Yes, it would have become a switch from an incident to an accident.
Exactly right.
All right. Well, so I'm thinking that we'll skip item D because I really want to get to the last item in the news folder before we move on to getting to know us section of or segment of the show. So item E, yesterday, the National Transportation Safety Board had a public board meeting, kind of a Zoom meeting kind of thing. Many of you out there perhaps had a chance to listen to it. Stephen and I had a chance to listen to the first, 10 to 15 minutes?
Actually, almost 2 hours worth.
No, I'm talking about when we were in the car, when
yeah,
it was actually
yeah,
happening.
like 5 minutes. Yeah.
Because we kind of lost
We were
cell
in the
phone
valley of
coverage.
death.
Yes,
Yeah.
the Valley of Death. Anyway,
Did you see the 500? Into the Valley of Death rode the 500.
I don't know what that's referring to.
That's referring to the charge of the Light Brigade.
Oh, no.
Oh,
No, you guys would know about that, but
Wasn't
never
even
mind.
really not sure what I'd be
There was
looking
a
for.
famous poem about it.
Oh, okay.
Into the Valley of Death Road, the 500.
Oh, yeah. Now I remember.
Heathens.
Sorry.
I don't know why I'm on this show.
I don't know why you bothered dealing with us, the unwashed deplorables. Okay. Let's see. The NTSB determined during a public board meeting held Tuesday that Atlas Air Flight 3591 crashed in Trinity Bay, Texas, because of the first officer's inappropriate response. Kind of seems like a theme here.
Yes.
To an inadvertent activation of the airplane's go-around mode, resulting in his spatial disorientation that led him to place the airplane in a steep descent from which the crew did not recover. Again, you'll remember this was February of 2019 when Atlas Air's Boeing 767 cargo jet entered a rapid descent from about 6,000 feet and impacted a marshy bay about 40 miles from Houston's George Bush Intercontinental Airport. The captain, first officer, and a non-rev jump seat pilot died in the crash. The airplane, which was carrying cargo from Miami to Houston for Amazon.com services, and the U.S. Postal Service, was destroyed. The first officer was a pilot flying the airplane at the time of the incident. The NTSB also determined the captain's failure to adequately monitor the airplane's flight path and to assume positive control of the airplane to effectively intervene contributed to the crash. Also cited as a contributing factor is the aviation industry's selection and performance measurement practices that failed to address the first officer's aptitude-related deficiencies and maladaptive stress response. The NTSB concluded the first officer likely experienced a pitch-up somnographic illusion, a specific kind of spatial disorientation in which forward acceleration is misinterpreted as the airplane pitching up, as the airplane accelerated due to the inadvertent activation of the go-around mode, which prompted the first officer to push forward on the elevator control column. The first officer subsequently believed the airplane was stalling and continued to push the control column forward, exacerbating the airplane's dive. However, no cues consistent with an aerodynamic stall, such as stick shaker activation, a stall warning annunciations, nose high pitch indications, or low airspeed indications were present. Additionally, the NTSB's airplane performance study found that the airplane's airspeed and angle of attack were not consistent with having been at or near a nose-high stalled condition. The first officer's response was contrary to standard operating or standard procedures and training for responding to a stall. The NTSB concluded that while the captain, as the pilot monitoring, was setting up the approach to Houston and communicating with air traffic control, his attention was diverted from monitoring the airplane's state and verifying that the flight was proceeding as planned. This delayed his recognition of and his response to the first officer's unexpected actions that placed the plane in a dive. Investigators also concluded that the captain's failure to command a positive transfer of control of the airplane as soon as he attempted to intervene on the controls enabled the first officer to continue to force the airplane into a steepening dive. While the first officer took deliberate actions to conceal the history of performance deficiencies, Atlas's reliance on designated agents to review pilot background records and to flag significant concerns was inappropriate and resulted in the company's failure to evaluate the first officer's unsuccessful attempt to upgrade to captain at his previous employer. Additionally, the NTSB found that the FAA met the deadline and complied with the requirements. Had the FAA met the deadline and complied with the requirements for implementing the pilot records database, the PRD, I think they refer to it, as stated in Section 203 of the Airline Safety and Federal Aviation Administration Extension Act of 2010, the pilot records database would have provided hiring employers relevant information about the first officer's employment history and long history of training performance deficiencies. The first officer in this incident deliberately concealed his history of performance deficiencies, which limited Atlas Air's ability to fully evaluate his aptitude and competency as a pilot, said NTSB Chairman Robert Sumwalt. Therefore, today we are recommending that the pilot records database include all background information necessary for a complete evaluation of a pilot's competency and proficiency. They go on to talk about the recommendations for getting this implemented quickly, because it's been taking way too long for them to implement. This is part of one of the outcomes of the Colgan 3407
Yep.
crash in Buffalo. One of the deficiencies that they noted at the time was the fact that we don't really have a good system to kind of track pilots' deficiencies and training and check rides and that sort of thing. And it's still, believe it or not, it's crazy to me that crash occurred in 2009. It's 2020. They still have not implemented this system, and it's crazy. I mean,
Yep. And they were saying it's going to be at least another 3 years before it's fully functional. So
yeah. So
Wow.
this was very, very sad.
Yeah.
So
Very much indeed.
it looks like, they go into much further detail, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this in the upcoming episodes as well as we get more information. The final report has not been issued yet, but it is forthcoming soon. But apparently, when the first officer was reaching around to store or stow the speed brakes, the speed brake handle, he may have inadvertently activated the go around switch, which I believe, Rick, is on the left.
there's one on both sides, I
Was it?
believe.
So
Okay.
yeah, so the 7.6 and the 7.5 have the same throttle quadrant. Basically, what happens is that the takeoff go around mode, not the takeoff go around, the go around mode is armed with one of two conditions. Either the flaps are out of up, so when you go to flaps 1, or you could be at flaps up and captured a localizer and glide slope. So once you capture the glide slope portion of the ILS, it also arms the go around mode. And so during the flight, as long as the go around mode is not armed, the switches, there's two paddles in the back of each thrust lever, obviously the left and the right. The paddle on the left hand side is there for the captain's thumb. So it's basically thumb paddles, and the paddle on the right hand side is for the first officer's thumb. So these by the first officer stowing the speed brake back, it makes sense to me that he bumped that paddle with a part of his arm or wrist or whatever, causing the go around mode to activate. And on the 767, the thrust doesn't go to full thrust. So really what happens is that the auto throttle through the thrust management computer is going to command the amount of thrust required to give you a 2,000 foot a minute climb. So that's really all it commands. Now that thrust is going to be, proportional to the pitch that you have. The lower the pitch, I guess, the more the thrust, because it needs to get you to 2,000 feet a minute. And so when you fly an automatic go around, obviously the pitch is going to be right where it needs to be. The thrust is going to be right where it needs to be to give you that 2,000 foot a minute climb. You can't go to full toga thrust on a 7.6 or a 7.5 by pushing that paddle. So that's apparently what happened, since he already had commanded flaps 1, and then when he stowed them, hit the paddle, and then they activated the go around. And that's
So was he stowing the speed brake, but he had already got called for the extension of the flaps.
flaps were up 1.
Yeah. So that's kind of, I think one of the things that they were discussing in the briefing was the fact that they thought it was kind of unusual for them to have the flaps already at 1 that far away from the airport.
Yeah, I remember when we were watching it, that was one of the questions that somebody asked was,
I mean, is that unusual?
Not necessary. Because, I mean, look, some people configure the airplane different from others. When you're new and you're green on the jet, you kind of, which I believe this guy was, and every other jet for that matter. You tend to be very conservative in the way you configure the airplane. The 767 is no 7.4, obviously, but it's not a super big airplane, but it still has quite a bit of inertia, and energy management can be a little tricky to learn. And so you start slow, you give yourself room, give yourself a lot of margin. Usually, you start to configure around about 20 miles out, something like that. When you get really good and comfortable at it, you can configure, in as little as 12 to 13 miles, sometimes 10 miles.
Yeah.
But that is if you have a long enough level flight portion to let that airspeed bleed. Now, the way I configure is really not based on my distance to the airport, but on my vertical position to my glide path.
Mhm.
That's how I do it. Now, there's instances when you can get to flaps 1 and hold your airspeed a little high to let the airplane pitch over to that 230, because flap 1 on 6 is 250 knots. So below 250, that's the placard speed. Below 250, you can go to flaps 1. So you can go to flaps 1 and hold the speed at 240, and the airplane's going to pitch over at 240 knots and use that kind of like a speed brake. Now, you can do that, and if you put speed brake out, you'll actually descend a little faster. And then once you get to the altitude where you want to be, then you'll dial the speed back, leave the speed brake out, and then the airplane will get to the next speed to continue on configuring. But it's all in how you manage the airspeed. Really, it's really all it is. It's not really written on stone that you must go flaps 1 at 20 miles or anything like that. So.
And I'm sure a lot of us could say it also depends on where you're going, especially if you've been in there a lot of times. You kind of know what kind of instructions you're going to get, and you're going to plan your configuration based on, just trial and error of you going into whatever airport you're going into.
Yep.
That's how, and that goes for every airplane. I mean, the time that I've flown into the times that I've flown into Afghanistan are very high and hot and high airports like Mexico and Quito and Bogota and La Paz and stuff like that. You are aware of that, and so you're very much more conservative in the way you configure that airplane. Houston's an easy airport. I mean, you're basically sea level, nothing to around per mile, so it's an easy one to go.
It's all about just managing your energy, and as you mentioned, Rick, the more experience you have with a particular airplane, the more comfortable you are and how the airplane flies and manages energy.
I mean, I was the same way when I started out. I planned 10, 15 miles out, get configured, and now I'm doing it as I'm turning 5 mile final,
10 feet above.
10 feet above, fully configured.
Okay, let's go ahead and put the gear down.
But
the thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I've got guys that move from the 175 to the CRJ that haven't flown the CRJ and know how you can configure at 5 miles. So they always kind of like, hey, you gonna configure? I was like, yeah, I'll configure when I'm 5 miles out. They're like, that's a little lazy. I'm like, no, it's fine.
It'll work.
It'll work.
Trust me.
Yeah, trust me.
Yeah, never. Even if a pilot tells you that, trust me. Don't trust. Yeah.
The thing here is make sure that you are completely stabilized and everything done, checklist complete, everything ready by 1,000 feet, whether it's IMC or VMC. That's why I tell my FOs, look, you do whatever it is you want to do, just have me stabilized at 1,000. Because if you don't, we're gonna have to go around.
Yeah.
Now, some of the headlines out there are saying, well, the first officer the co-pilot pushed the wrong button and that caused the airplane to crash. Well, no. That may have been a catalyst in this. It was like initiated the series of events that occurred here, but it was the reaction to accidentally hitting that button. And at 99.9999% of the time, if something like that happens, and it's not necessarily that unusual that something like that could happen inadvertently, you immediately recognize, I accidentally bumped the go around switch. The throttles are coming up, turn the throttles off, bring the throttles back, control the situation.
Yeah. And kind of going into the other part, this FO's training history, one of the other places that he had worked with that he didn't disclose, I believe one of the sim instructors said he had a very bad tendency of when things started going wrong, he would just push buttons and stuff. That's not something you want to do in a transport category airplane. Just start pushing buttons because you're panicking, let alone panicking in general.
Yeah, and I think we've mentioned this on previous episodes that he completely lied about or concealed the fact that he had not one but two.
I think it was actually 3 now that they've got done digging around. It was just somebody else too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, several other airlines that he had trouble in their training program and basically failed out, or he dropped out because he knew that he probably couldn't
finish
the
Yeah.
program, and he neglected to tell Atlas or the directed agent or whatever they call it, whatever the term is, that of this information.
Yeah.
Because he knew that if he had told them that he was never going to be hired by anybody.
Yeah, and I think for those that aren't pilots or understand how things are done here in the US, we have this thing called PRIA, which is the pilot record system that we currently have, and it's all done by forms and mail. So when you're applying at an airline, you got to get the records. You basically fill out this form, and then the company you're working for will mail it to the other company to get the records. And it takes a while to get this. I believe in the video we're watching, it took 7 weeks for them just to get records from the companies that he said he worked for. And by that time, he was already starting his sim session. So, I mean, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's a flawed system. It's got issues, and I think they're trying to fix it. But, not having that information handy can make, your decision to hire or not hire somebody different, I would think, than, what they're currently doing.
Right. And also in this situation, when the captain realized that the first officer was doing an inappropriate response to the situation, as they said, he never said, "I have the airplane," and he never, even though he was activating the controls, he never said, "Hey, dude, let go. I have the airplane." Relinquish the controls. I have the airplane, and then. We wouldn't be talking about this right now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the first event in today's episode that this has happened. I think it's number 3, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 3 with some kind of control issue and not following SOP.
So very, very sad situation. There's so much more that we could talk about.
Oh, can we? Because people have been asking in the chat room if you guys would like to comment on the recommendation that installation of cockpit imaging recorders under Part 121 or 135 aircraft should be implemented.
I think they should after December of 2023. That's what my recommendation is.
Is that because you still like flying buck naked?
No, Nick, I told you that we're not going to discuss that on the show. It's not a public thing.
Okay, sorry. My bad.
My question with that is that, what could you... the digital flight data recorders and quick access recorders have access to so much, and that what would be the benefit besides seeing the two pilots? I don't understand.
I think maybe one benefit I see is just seeing where hand placement is and if they actually activate or deactivate anything on the control panel or the throttle quadrant, anything like that. Because
they said they can't determine really. They're just kind of
guessing.
They're guessing that
based
the
on
first officer is the one that hit
data. So I can see that. And to be honest, I don't know. I fly CRJ. I don't even know where they would put the camera to start with. Not only that, you can't really see everything, especially if it's dark. Yeah, exactly. What you do, make an infrared camera, and then not only that, you've got to modify the certificate for the aircraft because it's new equipment, and then you've got to go up an MEL list. And then what happens when you have to defer it? Is there a special procedure in place that they're going to let you just get a new one, or are you going to be able to defer it and go fly?
To be fair, Stephen, all that will be sorted out by the FAA. There'll be an MEL thing, and it'll be like some other components, like the accident data recorder. Are you allowed to fly with that working or not, etc.?
Yeah,
and it'll all fit in. They'll find somewhere to stick it. They'll work it out. The basic concept is. There is two really diverse points of view here. There's an entire number of pilots who think it's got to be good because the amount of information you can add to the analysis of an accident naturally needs to include what you see as well as what you hear. We've got voice recorders. Why can't we have video recorders? But there seems to be another element that are incredibly resistant. I don't understand why.
And I get all of that, but let's also look at this though. It's taken them over 10 years to do a pilot record database system that's not even operational right now, and we're going to get the FAA to implement video recording for all 21 135 carriers in the United States. That's going to at least take probably 50 years.
No, yeah. But it could be argued that even if it does, at least it's done.
And then you got the pilot unions to deal with too. That's a whole
yeah.
other. That's
No,
a whole
That's
separate
that's
thing.
the other thing. That's
Voice recorders were introduced and they were implemented within, I don't know, 2 years, 5 years of it becoming law in certain countries. I'm sure America can work this out, just like every other country will have to, because, ICAO will, no, not ICAO, but the various controlling authorities will generally work hand in glove with each other. And if one country does it, everyone will do it.
I mean, I have to say, my viewpoint about that has slowly been changing over time to a position where, yeah, maybe it's something to think about, but I don't know. I'll just have to get used to flying with clothes on.
Yes, I know. Do you still put a plastic bag on the seat for the next pilot?
Well, if I have the time and I feel, civil at the time, yeah, I do.
It's very good of you. Very
Yes.
good of you, Jeff.
Thank you very much. Well, speaking of civil, I think it's now time to introduce somebody that I've noticed who has joined us in the video. And of course, we all know her as Dr. Steph. And let me do her little spiel here. She is coming from us at her lakeside home in the Carolinas, and she is a doctor. That's why I call her Dr. Steph. Skydiver, marathon runner, strength training junkie, IPA connoisseur, and not necessarily the most important, but she is a commercial multi-engine instrument rated pilot. Hello, Dr. Steph.
Hi, Captain Jeff, and it's good to see all you guys. Stephen, Captain Nick, Rick.
Hi.
Hi.
There,
Yeah, I
Beth.
figured I should probably start. I've been listening to the last piece of news there for a little while I was grabbing a quick bite of lunch after work here. But I figured I should jump in when we started talking about flying naked. I felt like HR needed to have a presence here.
Dang it.
Yeah.
We almost
What,
got away.
you approve or not?
Start taking notes. Well, we'll discuss that later.
Well, you drive topless.
That's the car, Nick. That's the car.
Okay.
Not
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
sometimes you get a little confused about that, Nick.
Yeah,
Oh,
Nick is a
okay.
little uncertain as to
Yeah, lost in
what is
translation over here.
Catholic. Yes,
I don't see
exactly.
a difference. Driving, flying, it's all the same.
Also, I wanted to address, I clearly wore the right t-shirt for today. You were talking about, I said, my t-shirt says, trust me, I'm a pilot. So
Yes.
Excellent.
Very
Okay.
nice.
Yeah.
I mean,
Anyway.
you all agree, right? That you never. I mean, obviously there are degrees of trust, but you cannot ever completely trust the person with whom you're flying, because that person may be having a bad day or might be distracted by something. So you always have to. I remember as an instructor, and many of you listening who are flight instructors probably can identify with this. It seems that the one student that's going to get you in trouble is the one that you think, man, they know everything there is to know. They're such a solid pilot. I can kind of not worry about them anymore. And as soon as you stop paying attention, that's when that pilot tries to kill you. And that's why, I used to have brown hair. I have a lot of gray/white hair now, and it's mainly because of the students that tried to kill me in jet pilot training in the U.S. Air Force when I was an instructor, especially when they were on my wing solo. Wow, that just still makes me.
Those turning rejoins. They were.
Oh gosh, yeah,
They were
I
Death
know.
City.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, we just did you want to add anything else, Steph, to our discussion of any of the news items before we get on to one of the?
No, you guys did
better
a great
parts of
job
the
of all that. So,
Well, thanks.
well done. Yeah.
Except for the naked stuff,
well, that's, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that I was paying attention.
Okay.
at that point.
Well, very good. Well, now it's time. Getting to know you. Oh, and such a lovely picture with the nonverbal gestures and all kinds of.
That's the kind of
Interesting.
captain we all want to fly with.
Which, interestingly, I don't know if we have that in the feedback today or not, but I did receive some feedback from somebody requesting some advice regarding flying with captains like that one pictured in the video.
I think it is in there. I think I saw it in the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Good.
think it's down the end.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Who wants to go first and tell us what's happening with them since the last episode? Well, it's not going to be Nick because
I guess not Nick.
took himself out.
Nick's like, I'm out.
Rick. Hey, you missed the last episode. We missed you, and we're so happy that you were able to join us today because, man, this guy went out of the way to make sure that he was with us on today's episode. What time is it there in Seoul, Korea?
It is just 5:06 in the morning here on Thursday. Yeah, so it's I'm on the other side of the world, other side of the clock, a day ahead of everybody. But yeah, I've been out here for the last couple of days. I commercialed from Phoenix up to Anchorage via Dallas on American. That was nice. And then I rode a 7.4 company 7.4 down here to Seoul the other day, which was nice to be on the 7.4 for after a couple of months. And then I've been sitting here doing what we call rice runs. So the 3 sectors from Incheon, South Korea, to Taipei to Nagoya and back here, called rice runs because we carry rice. It's got nothing to do with anything else. It's a lot of the stuff that carries rice. So I'm going to be doing that. I did that first set of flights yesterday, and then I'm going to do them again today in about another 12 and a half hours. Doing that, and then hopefully be done here in a few days and head back stateside to sleep for a week straight because this jet lag stuff. I tell you, that's why I went to the 7.6, and it really is a little bit of it kicks you in the butt quite hard. And I don't know. I'm also must be getting a little older. I can't deal with it.
I was just going to say, as you're
as
such
well
an
as
old bloke.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Hey, let me tell you, it gets better. No, that's not right.
Does it really? Excellent.
No,
that's what I hear all day from my patients too.
Yeah,
getting
I
older.
find myself doing this all the time, and like further away. I'm like, what the?
It's fine once the dementia sets in. You'll be all right.
Yeah, then you don't worry about it anymore.
Exactly.
All
happy
your
all the
cares
time.
go away.
It's like this guy sitting next to me. I don't know who he is. Every day, it's like I meet a new friend.
Makes for great car rides.
You've been doing the driving, right, Stephen?
Very nice.
Yeah.
No, actually, Jeff drove
Uh-oh.
a little bit yesterday, and
Oh, I'm glad you guys arrived safely.
He says, "Okay, Grandpa, the speed limit's above 30." No, I'm just kidding.
With the blinker on the whole time.
I'm not that bad. Close, but not that.
We love you, Jeff. We love you.
Oh, thanks. I love you guys too. Well, great. So, anything else, Rick, or shall we move on?
No, nothing. Just flying out here. Happy to be back on with you guys. I missed last week. Had a little not quite a medical emergency, but we had an appointment to the endocrinologist for Kaya, and it ran a little long because that's just different protocols and stuff. And I just saw the time it's like, we got to be heading back soon. We got to be, and it just ran long. And
doctors never run behind schedule. I can confirm that 100%.
Then I understand. I mean, it's crazy because then why do they give you an appointment time? It's like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, that's the time we want you to be there.
That's nothing to do with the doctor.
Has nothing to do with us. I mean, whatever.
How are the cacti?
The cacti are good. They're happy, plump. One of them got me the other day, and my hand still hurts. Little bastards. But very good.
Okay, good to hear.
Geez.
We've been seeing a lot of cacti
Yeah.
on this trip. A lot of time out here in the West.
Especially yesterday.
Cool.
Do they really look like the ones in the cartoons where they got like 3?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
The saguaro.
Those are called saguaros.
Yeah, especially we're in the part of the country that Rick is. You can see a lot of them down there.
And
We didn't see a
are they
lot
the
of
ones
them
you make
larger.
tequila out of?
No, that's agave.
Agave.
That's agave. It's different.
What's that one look like?
It's like
Got more broad leafy.
yeah, and it's not
yeah.
like a cactus proper. It's a lot. It doesn't.
Shorter.
It's a lot shorter.
It does have like little spiky things on the broad leaves.
Yeah,
but
yeah. But it's not your typical saguaro. No, not the cartoony ones.
Oh, okay. Thanks for that.
Yeah, well, you'll have to come out here sometime, Nick. We'll do a road trip and we'll show you all
Yeah,
the
you'd love
cactus.
Oh, yeah,
Cacti.
absolutely. Yeah, I'd rather drink some tequila. That'd be great.
Oh yeah, you have to.
Forget the cacti.
Yeah.
Straight to the tequila.
Exactly.
Da, 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 da.
Ooh,
My favorite karaoke song.
Nick, since we're talking tequila and
Tequila.
there we go. What's been happening with you besides drinking mass quantities of alcohol?
Well, that is actually I'm trying to find a couple of days in the week where I don't have to drink, but
Oh,
you know,
don't
I
have
get
to.
yeah. I'm
How's that
finding
going for you?
my life gets a bit boring by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So, you know, a drink or two helps.
Yeah.
And not a lot. And now a major event in my life is washing the car. So what can I say? I'm actually thinking, hoping that to be able to get together with Pilot Pip and Al. I think both are in the chat room next week. So if that comes off, chaps, really looking forward to that. But otherwise, you know, just doing normal sort of me stuff, a bit of photography, being in touch with Ant, chatting away on, you know, his photography channel and Twitter, Ant Pruitt. Love that guy. He's great. Giving me some advice about the new Canon camera I'm thinking of getting.
Oh.
And I've been playing my bowls and still in all the competitions. Haven't been knocked out yet. So that's kind of good. Life for me is very relaxing. Thank you. You'll enjoy it, Jeff, when you get there.
Well, I do now.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, I thought you were talking about playing with my balls.
I've been doing that since I was about 11.
I saw Rick plotting what he was going to say there. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Are you going to meet with Nev
need
as
to-
well, Nick?
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know the ins and outs. I'm
gotcha.
just waiting to see what happens.
Excellent. Well, you'll have to give us a full report on that. Well, as much as you can for
Well,
our
I will. If
G-rated
it
show.
comes off. Yeah.
PG.
Yeah, PG, maybe
PG
Well,
13?
R light.
I mean,
You know what? Nev and his banana, they get everywhere.
oh boy.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Oh my.
this is escalating quickly.
Well, hey,
Yeah. Hi. How are y'all doing?
HR, how's it going?
HR. It's good. I can bring this right back to a very boring level of discussion.
Okay, good.
Since the last time we chatted, I have done a lot of work and then a lot of nothing. I had a nice weekend of doing nothing for the first time in a while. So caught up on some sleep. It was Justice's birthday, so we had a very nice dinner out in Charlotte.
Nice.
Spent a lot of time on the lake. It was a nice, sunny, hot weekend, as happens in July in the Carolinas. The water temperature has reached bathtub status.
Nice.
Yeah, nice, lukewarm, 88-degree water temperature, 85-degree water temperature. Yeah, and just worked on my my suntan a little bit. So it's been
I
nice
can see that.
and relaxing, and
That's good.
yeah. So, thanks. My vitamin D levels, I should say. Got to prevent those
Yes.
rickets.
Nothing to do with aesthetics. It's all about medicine and health.
That's right. So yeah, I mean, work's still been busy. Today was not too terribly busy, so I'm glad I was able to get here reasonably on time and join you guys.
Great. We're glad that you did.
Mhm.
And so now it's our turn. Stephen, what have you been doing recently?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Just sitting. here.
Just sitting?
Yeah, just sitting.
We have been doing a lot of sitting,
Lots sitting
but we've been moving
in a car.
in a car.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have been following us on our little road trip episodic audio adventures.
Absolutely. Very entertaining. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So unfortunately, didn't put out day 8 and 9 because we.
It didn't put out. What does that mean?
No,
I-
it seems to be this reoccurring theme. We start watching this show on Amazon and we lose track
I'll
of
do it
time.
later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Good. Just do it later.
By the way, it's a really entertaining show on Amazon Prime called Catastrophe. I don't know if any of you out there have seen it. It's not something you
It
want to
sounds
watch.
a bit
with your-
like this show.
It's not a family show.
Yeah, it's
Not
not.
a family show.
Yeah, it's NSW. Was it
NSFW.
NSF?
Not safe
That's
for
it, yeah.
work.
Suitable for work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Or family, young ones.
Yeah.
But it's really the writing and dialogue is just amazingly good. It really is funny. Anyway, so we were the last show we did was early on in our trip.
We were in Durango, Colorado. We rode the train and everything.
Yeah.
And then the next day drove through Utah, went through Zion, and then ended up in Hurricane, Utah. Spent the night there.
Well, you forgot about Moab. Yeah. We went
Oh,
Durango
yeah.
to Moab.
Oh, yeah,
and
that's
Arches
right.
and Canyonlands
I
National
forget. Yeah,
Parks.
Durango. Then we went over to did Moab. So Arches, drove through there. And then went over to Canyonlands, saw everything there.
Jeff?
Then we stayed in Moab.
Jeff, is he your travel agent? I'd get a new one, mate.
Well, I mean, on paper, he's great. No, he's fantastic. Actually, he actually coordinated almost everything on this trip, which is really
cool.
Yeah, surprisingly everything went decently well. But yeah, so did that, and then we got the next day, drove through Utah, ended up in Hurricane after we went through Zion, which that wasn't planned. That just what was it, Stephen
Andrus?
Yeah, he recommended we take this alternate route to go through there. So went through there,
which is really good advice.
Yeah, it was. That was actually really nice going through there. Stayed in Hurricane and then drove down to the Grand Canyon, and we skipped the North Rim just based on time. And I'm kind of glad we did, because it took a long time to go around the backside because the East Rim entrance was closed because of COVID. The Navajo reservation didn't want people coming in and out, so we had to go all the way down the Flagstaff to go back up to the South Rim. We went through there, did a couple of different viewpoints, looked at the Grand Canyon, stayed inside of the Grand Canyon Village that night. And then the next day we just drove over to, what was the name of the town we stayed at? Pahrump, Nevada.
Pahrump, yeah.
Yep. We stopped in Vegas, got lunch. But the main part of that was to try and see Hoover Dam, which is closed, even though the little thing says you can go to the viewpoint, but you have to go across the dam to get to the viewpoint. And the dam's closed, so
it didn't work out.
It didn't work out. So that was kind of just a day of driving. And then yesterday, we got up and drove into Death Valley, which is a whole lot of nothing, really. But we went down to the highest point of Death Valley and got attacked by bees. I'm glad I was paying attention, because there was a sign on the drive up that said "bee hazard." And I'm like, oh, okay, not that big of a deal. And I've never seen bees this aggressive. Like, we got out of the car to try and take pictures. They just came out of nowhere and just started flying around. They like clumped up on the car. It was pretty crazy.
It's like that movie Birds, except for it was bees.
Yeah, yeah. So we didn't stay long at that point.
Bees?
And then went down the mountain where we were at, and then went along this dirt road through the canyon, which is actually where they filmed Return of the Jedi, where they're going to Jabba's palace. It's that same stretch of dirt that the droids are going across.
It was a dirt road.
Yeah, it was dirt road. I'm really surprised my car made it through some of it, to be honest.
I was like, oh, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
We're not in a 4-wheel drive Jeep. We're in a 2-wheel drive Prius.
Yeah.
But that Prius served us well.
Yeah. Then we drove down to the Salt Flats, and the Salt Flats is actually where Mos Eisley is supposed to be. So it's not really there. It's just salt. Went down to the lowest point in North America,
282 or something like that, or 280 something feet below sea level.
Yep. And then continued on back up through Death Valley, stopped to see the dunes where New Hope that the droids kind of land and are wandering around and all that. And then we continued on, and it got kind of interesting. We kind of went up this incline to go over into the next valley where the Star Wars Canyon is at, and just a lot of going up and then going down. The Prius kind of didn't like that. The brakes kind of got hot and everything. Not only that, I think it was already 110 degrees by 10 o'clock in the morning, so got warm really quick. But we stopped at the Star Wars Canyon, took a break, and was hoping to see some jets. We saw 2, but they were kind of high. They didn't really cut through the canyon, but that canyon is it's nowhere near as big as it looks like in pictures. I mean, it is really tight. I'm really surprised they
drop down below eye level if you're in that little viewpoint or vista area, whatever you call it.
Yeah, it was a sight to see. I really wish we could have seen someone cut through there, but
we hung out for a little while.
Yeah,
but,
had some food or some snacks that we had, and then continued on and drove down towards San Pedro, where we're staying now. And then we stopped in Lancaster. I had some stuff to take care of for my apartment, and actually just kind of wanted to pick out where my office was going to be at for my new job. And then,
nice apartment complex, by the
yeah,
way.
yeah,
that,
it was.
Yeah.
And then I never actually had looked at the apartment complex in real life. It was all Google based. So I'm kind of glad it did look nice after seeing it in person. But yeah, then get the drive through LA traffic and ended up here and had a really nice dinner last night. So and then house is really interesting, like nice statues and other artwork in this place. Yeah,
it's eclectic, for sure. But it's a really nice place, and it's just really nice, close to the water, the Los Angeles harbor. This house was actually constructed in 1887, I think. You said, yeah. And anyway, the
1987 or 1887?
1887.
Believe it or not.
Golly, I didn't know America had been invented then.
Well,
I mean, that's really old for us, Nick. Like,
Yeah,
It really is.
especially on the West Coast, really old. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, a really nice dry breeze outside and relatively cool, especially compared to the last several days of our trip. It's been quite high temperatures. It's been really a lot of fun. And now, Steph, how many national parks have you logged on your national park?
It's a good question. Hold on. Let me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm looking at my map.
Shoot.
10,
we
11. I got 11.
Oh, we only went through 5.
Yeah,
Dang it.
5. Yeah,
Got some work to do, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's out of like almost 60. So I'm not doing so hot either. Got a few more to go.
But we knocked out 5 in just a few days time.
Yeah. I mean, Utah's the place to do that. So
Yeah. Lots
most of my national parks are
to
in Utah, the ones I've been to.
Right.
Because they're all right there.
Yeah. So, been eating for the most part good food, and a couple hits and misses, or some misses,
like the
but
French
mostly
fries
hits.
at In-N-Out yesterday. Those were disappointing. I don't know what happened, but
Style.
I don't know. They weren't really hot, and they didn't have any pre-salt on them. It was really disappointing.
Yeah. Usually they're pretty good.
But the double burger was
that was
awesome.
There you go. There you go.
And
make
good
me
for
hungry.
you.
Yeah. No, I need some In-N-Out burger.
Breakfast opens here in 2 hours, so perfect.
Oh, good.
Oh, good. Yeah. It'll be right
Anyway.
on
An
time for
hour. An hour.
the breakfast buffet.
6:30. Yeah.
Okay. And then after today's recording, I'm going to pack everything up as quickly as I can. We're going to put the bags in Steven's Prius, and then we're going to drive from here across the harbor, or sort of, to Ballast Point Brewing Company, their Long Beach location.
Ooh.
And we're going to have a little mini APG meetup there, and open air. Don't worry. I know that California has been very restrictive regarding that kind of thing, but it's all open air, and they're using all kinds of protocols to ensure social distancing and all that jazz. So
Got your masks and things. Yeah.
got our masks. Yeah. And so we're going to head over there for a meetup for a few hours. And then I'm going to either Steven or somebody, I hope, will drive me up to.
Yeah, you're walking from here, buddy.
Okay.
I got you in the car.
Okay.
It's been a week. He's like, you're
Yeah,
on your
I
own.
know. I'm not sure. Did I say something wrong? But go up to the Union Station in Los Angeles and board the Sunset Limited that leaves tonight, and ends up after 2.5 days in New Orleans. And then I'll spend the night at a hotel nearby the station there in New Orleans. And then on Saturday, the Crescent from New Orleans to Atlanta. So I'm looking forward to. This is the first time I've ever taken a long train journey here in the U.S. or overnight, that kind of thing. So
Nice.
it'll be a lot of fun. I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so too.
So, let me refer to something that was sent in by someone who apologized for not being able to make it to our meetup today. And it's we know him as Pasadena Brian Coleman. He sent me this. He said, longtime listeners of the show might remember the name Pasadena Brian. If you're new to the show, there is now a reason to know him. In addition to being a longtime listener of the APG show, he was also the associate producer and co-host of the other great aviation podcast, Airplane Geeks. Anywho, passenger or Pasadena Brian couldn't make it here to the meetup today, but I wanted to pass along a special promotion he created for the APG community. He has an Etsy shop and has been making aviation themed masks as well as other styles of masks to help protect each of us in style. Best of all the proceeds from these mask sales are going to support a local Pasadena women's shelter. Therefore, if you need a mask and have the funds, it would be great if you could support his shop and help raise much needed money for the Pasadena Women's Shelter. To make this offer even better, but wait, how much would you pay now? Huh?
$1, Bob.
Well, no, it's more than that, I'm sure.
Okay.
He has created a special discount coupon for all of you APGers. Please go to his Etsy shop, TAB Fabric, and we'll have the link in the show notes. But again, that's etsy.com/shop/ capital T, capital A, capital B, and then all lowercase fabric. And check out the masks. Probably a pretty good chance that you don't have to, I don't know if it's case specific or not in a URL like that. Sometimes they are. That's weird. Anyway, check out the masks. But as many as you want, or buy as many as you want, and add the code LOVEAPG. And in this case, it's all uppercase, LOVAPG, Love APG, to receive an additional 10% discount. Links will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for your support. Remember to use the code LOVEAPG, all caps, for your discount. So we're happy to support that, Brian. Thank you for doing that and supporting the local women's shelter in Pasadena. And I'm sorry that you weren't able to come down and meet up with us today. But, you know, hopefully sometime in the future, if we're still alive and the Rona is gone, we'll have another meetup out this way, I'm sure.
Post-Rona.
Yes, post-Rona. Okay. And anything else before we move on to the coffee fund?
I think we covered everything.
All right, let's do that then. And I'll push this button here. It says coffee fund. Now it's time to sing, Stephen.
Johnny, how much
La 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 la.
Never mind. I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the John and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. All right. Coffee fund, your way, dear listener, to support the show financially. You'll notice we don't have advertising on the show, except for the Etsy thing that we did for Brian because he's a good friend and community member at the APG. So we have to, well, we don't have to, but we like getting donations, contributions from you all to help offset some of the costs of doing the show, equipment and such, and also meetups, funding, that kind of thing. So 2 different ways to do it. One is called the Classic Fund. And since the last episode, we have Catherine Jones, Richard Adams, and George Leslie contribute to the APG Classic Coffee Fund. Another way to do it is to become a patron of the show via patreon.com. No new patrons this week, but that's okay. We've got a bunch of great folks that are patrons of the show. And if you want to check that out as well, please head to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. There you'll find a couple of different ways to support the show. And we really do appreciate it. That's not the right sound effect.
Oops.
Here we go.
Captain, incoming message.
Does anybody need a break? You doing all right?
I'm doing all right.
Let's have one, thanks.
All right.
Need a beverage?
No, I think I'll save myself for the meetup.
Okay.
So thank you for the offer.
You're welcome.
Okay. Well, then let's keep going. And I'll go over here to our feedback folder. All right. Let's start off with item numero uno in the feedback notebook. Hello, Captain, Jeff, and crew. I just scoured the, oh, by the way, this is from Ahmad Dan Hamadou. Hello, Captain, Jeff, and crew. I just scoured the web for anything on that description of the Boeing 747 as, quote, that place that went to, or the place that went to Hawaii twice a day. The statement may, in fact, have been made by a journalist media outlet covering the emergence of the 747 or by Boeing. I'm still trying to recollect. Apparently, I forgot to mention that the statement was made back then just to illustrate the grandeur of the aircraft as received by the people of that time. I racked my memory some more and now recall that the article containing the statement was contained in a press release, a newsletter that accompanied the huge, the press release, IT newsletter maybe, that accompanied the huge poster. There was also printed material in the, quote, working together collaboration between Viewing and its main customers that helped shape the between Boeing probably and its main customers that helped shape the development of the Boeing 777. Unfortunately, during our relocation, which I was absent from one of our former homes, those printed materials got lost. I sent some inquiries to Boeing Commercial to see if they could come up with anything on the article. So, Ahmad had sent in something regarding the marketing slogan or whatever, the place that went to Hawaii twice a day. And so we discussed it a little bit, and he was trying to kind of give us a little bit more information about that. I did a search, just a cursory search on Google, and couldn't come up with anything that referenced that particular slogan. So he's trying to help us out. So thank you, Ahmad. If you do end up finding more information about that, I don't even have to tell him this. He'll let us know.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Just a technical break here. Liz, did you want me to change the order of any of these, or do you want me to continue with? Okay, very good. All right, let's move on to item 2, sent in from Lucas. Just another data point on aircraft that have gaseous oxygen systems for passengers. The mighty 747-400. I only remembered that due to Qantas Flight 30, which you can read about. And then he gives us a link to Qantas Flight 30. And in it, just a recap here, this is the Australian Transport Safety Bureau depressurization event, 475 kilometers northwest of Manila, Philippines, back in July of 2008. It was a Boeing Company 747-438, Victor Hotel, Oscar Juliet Kilo. Basically, again, we were talking about gaseous as opposed to the chemical oxygen generators that are on most modern airplanes now. Again, on the 25th of July, 2008, the Boeing 747-400 with 365 persons on board departed Hong Kong International Airport on a scheduled transport flight to Melbourne, Australia. Approximately 55 minutes into the flight, while the aircraft was cruising at 29,000 feet, a loud bang was heard by passengers and crew, followed by the rapid depressurization of the cabin. Oxygen masks dropped from the overhead compartment shortly afterward, and it was reported that most passengers and crew commenced using the masks. After donning their own oxygen masks, the flight crew carried out the cabin altitude non-normal checklist items and commenced a descent to a lower altitude where supplemental breathing oxygen would no longer be required. A Mayday distress radio call was made on the regional air traffic control frequency. After leveling the aircraft at 10,000 feet, the flight crew diverted to Ninoy Aquino International Airport, Manila, where an uneventful visual approach and landing was made. The aircraft was stopped on the runway for an external inspection before being towed to the terminal for passenger disembarkation. Subsequent inspection of the aircraft by the operator's personnel and ATSB investigators revealed an inverted T-shaped rupture in the lower right side of the fuselage immediately beneath the wing leading edge to fuselage transition fairing, which had been lost during the event. Items of wrapped cargo were observed partially protruding from the rupture, which extended for approximately 2 meters along the length of the aircraft and 1.5 meters vertically. A big hole.
Yeah.
After clearing the baggage and cargo from the forward aircraft hold, it was evident that one passenger oxygen cylinder, number 4 from a bank of 7 along the right side of the cargo hold, had sustained a sudden failure and forceful discharge of its pressurized contents into the aircraft hold, rupturing the fuselage in the vicinity of the wing fuselage leading edge fairing. The cylinder had been propelled upward by the force of the discharge, puncturing the cabin floor and entering the cabin adjacent to the second main cabin door. The cylinder had subsequently impacted the door frame, door handle, and overhead paneling before falling to the cabin floor and exiting the aircraft through the ruptured fuselage. Whew, what a trip.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh boy.
Oh, exciting.
What is
Well,
that?
I just came to say hi. Now, see ya.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's one of the dangers, I guess, involved in, carrying
Gas.
oxygen cylinders. Yeah. So I think aren't most flight deck / cockpit oxygen systems the gaseous type? I know that every airplane I've flown,
Yeah.
they have been. For the passengers, usually, as I mentioned earlier, these days, mostly the chemical generators.
Yeah.
What do you think, Rick? I
No,
think that he
yeah.
was.
No, the just like you said, the oxygen system for cockpits is in fact the tanks, and you go down to the lower 41 there, down the E&E, and you can see the bottles. As I said, I think a couple episodes ago, the 777 freighter had a set of tanks for the cockpit and also a set of tanks for the supernumeraries in the back. But just as you said, I mean, at least the passenger jets that I've flown, the passenger oxygen system is in fact the chemical one. So I've never flown it. Although maybe that may not be true, because I've flown passenger dash 400s, and I don't know if our 400s have gaseous systems or is it chemical? I don't know. I'd have to look.
So this particular one, like all three systems, it said were gaseous oxygen system. There were 13 high pressure cylinders for the passengers. So yeah, and then they all went through like a flow control unit, I guess, that would disperse it.
Yeah,
like a common bus or whatever.
Yeah,
not Airbus.
Well, all I'm saying is because as part of the pre-flight, when you go down to your ICAS screens, your engine indicating crew alerting system, you go to one of the pages is status, and on that status page you get the pressure of the oxygen system, and you can certainly see it says crew oxygen, but I don't remember seeing a passenger oxygen pressure value for it, which leads me to believe that it's clear that this has to be some kind of option, some airline specific option. I'm sure some airlines have it, some airlines don't, but I don't remember seeing that on the 400s I've flown.
Well, we at Acme in Salt Lake City back in the early to mid 90s had a 727 sitting at the gate. I think it was gate 4, and I think most of the crew were not on the airplane. I think most of the passengers, I'm not sure of all the details now. It's been a while, but that airplane had all gaseous oxygen for both passengers and cockpit crew. And one of the cylinders located in the lower forward cargo section of the airplane, I believe that's where it was located, ended up leaking and then catching fire, and the airplane caught on fire. And luckily the flight engineer, I believe it was a flight engineer, was on board at the time and was able to get the passengers that were on the airplane safely off the airplane. It was kind of a hero, actually. So yeah, they can not only be rockets. Columbus, Mississippi, Carl said that he's seen the valves get knocked off and the things shoot like a rocket for hundreds of yards.
Oh yeah,
it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they're pretty. He said 2,000 psi. Just going back to this one on the 7.4, it was 1850 psi for 12,755 kilopascals. I don't know what that means.
Oh yeah, that's what I usually
use. Yeah, that's standard. I'm pretty sure.
Kilopascals.
But it sounds like fairly high pressure there.
Yeah.
And I find it funny because as part of the exterior walk around that the FO does, or whoever the relief pilot is, you go on the front of the airplane, and on the right hand side, the front, right underneath the RVSM area where the pitot static tubes are and the angle of attack vane is and all that. There's a green disc, and that is the oxygen discharge disc. And I always found it funny that if it's green, it's fine, obviously, and if it's yellow, the bottle discharged. But if the bottle blows up and it's going to leave a hole in the side of the airplane, I think that'd be your indicator right there.
That's a good indication.
Good indication.
Instead of
Yeah, but is it
the
a
yellow
green
circle
hole or a yellow hole?
Exactly. Is it a yellow hole? Exactly.
Well, if you actually look at the photos from this incident, it was multicolored. There were all kinds of colors involved in the cargo trying to push out through the rupture of the aircraft. Got sort of plugged up the hole, I guess, sort of. Anyway,
I'm guessing that must be a pretty standard system, Rick, because we had exactly the same indicator on the Airbus.
It must be.
Yep,
Yeah,
and same
I believe so.
McDonnell
Yeah.
Douglas's. How about the RJ? Same thing. Green.
Yeah, we got green right underneath the galley service door.
Yep. There you go. Standard. Okay. Well, guess what time it is? It's
quarter to 10.
That's 1:41
Yeah, 1:41.
in on the West Coast, but that's not what I mean, and you know it. It is now time for the best part of the show, the Old Pilot's Plane Tales. This one, interesting title. It's going to be an interesting listen, I'm sure. Who killed Yogi Bear?
The Old Pilot's Plane Tales. Who killed Yogi Bear? The ejector seat that was my chair of choice for nearly 20 years is still a subject of fascination for a lot of pilots, mainly those who have never been strapped to one, and also for the subjects of a small island in the Pacific whose ruler supposedly uses one from a crashed SR-71 as his throne. It's often the opinion of folk not part of the small fast jet community that an ejection is a simple matter. You just pull the handle and boom, you're safe. Certainly the community of American black and Himalayan bears aren't fooled. Several of them were conscripted. I certainly don't think they volunteered to take part in ejector seat tests for the United States Air Force B-58 Hustler back in the early 60s. Now, you may wonder why Yogi, smarter than the average bear, disappeared from our TV screens. It appears that he was one of several bears who were drugged and then fired out of an aircraft at a variety of altitudes and speeds to test the survivability of the Hustler ejection system. It was nice that they all lived through the trauma, including the one named Yogi, just suffering the odd broken bone, that is. Unfortunately, the subsequent medical examinations involved euthanasia before dissection to examine for internal injury. Poor Yogi.
What happens when I pull a rope, Yogi?
I sail over the wall, the parachute pops open, and old Yogi floats to the ground like a fallen leaf. Let's blast off, boo-boo.
Don't forget to write.
Ready, boo-boo boy? Go! Geronimo!
I gotta admit, you don't quit, Yogi. How about that? He finally got off the ground.
The first human to eject whilst supersonic was North American aviation test pilot George Smith, who abandoned an F-100 Super Sabre at Mach 1.05 as it hurtled towards the ground in a near vertical dive. He had been up at around 37,000 feet when the flight controls of his fighter began to feel heavy, and the nose of the aircraft began to drop. But then the stick refused to move as the flight controls stopped responding to even the most vigorous of efforts. Applying a considerable pull of over 200 pounds in an attempt to get out of the increasingly steep dive had no effect. The F-100's hydraulics had failed. As the brand new Super Sabre, just out of the factory, accelerated vertically downwards, Smith realized that it was going to be a very short flight. The little fighter passed the sound barrier, and he knew that his chances of survival were going to be slim. But then he heard a fellow pilot shout over the radio, "Bail out, George!" At around 675 knots, he jettisoned his canopy to be met with the howling roar of the air around him, and he instinctively hunkered down, not the thing to do when ejecting. Then, with a mere 6,500 feet left, he fired his seat out into the supersonic slipstream around the aircraft. Hitting the airflow was like hammering into a brick wall. The force of the air dragging him was around 8,000 pounds, 3,500 kilos, producing around 40 Gs of deceleration. Mercifully, George Smith was battered into unconsciousness. The blasting wind stripped him of his helmet, oxygen mask, boots, gloves, watch, and even his wedding ring. Blood from the severe bruising bloated his face into a swollen, grotesque, and unrecognizable version of himself. His eyelids were forced open, and his eyeballs tortuously mauled, whilst his internal organs, unable to withstand the enormous G-forces, were severely damaged, particularly his liver. Horribly bruised and beaten, his body flailed end over end as it tumbled towards the ocean below. The ejector seat, however, operated as it was designed to do, and Smith's limp body was forced out of the metal frame, only to be hit by the shock of his parachute opening well above its maximum design speed. The force was so high that a third of the material in the canopy was instantly ripped away, but thankfully the remainder held, and spiraling downwards, Smith was deposited into the water, as luck would have it, only 75 yards from a fishing boat. Smith's luck held, as the boat's skipper was a former Navy rescue expert, and within minutes they had him on board and were powering the short distance to the shore and help. When he was brought into hospital, George Smith was close to death, with severe internal blood loss and only a faint pulse. The doctors worked on him for hours, and their dedication and skill was rewarded a week later when he regained consciousness, able to hear but blind. His recovery was slow and punctuated with more operations, and his weight fell to only 150 pounds, a mere 68 kilos. His damaged liver meant that he could never drink again, but eventually the hemorrhages in his eyes healed and his sight returned. Not only had Smith survived, but he was eventually able to return to flying, albeit in slow, prop-driven aircraft, but ultimately he returned to pilot jets. He even got back into an F-100, and he lived for nearly 40 more years. Not all ejections go according to plan or are even intended. Main man Micah told me about the unusual and worrying experience of Lieutenant Keith Gallagher, the bombardier of a Ka-6, the tanker version of the A-6 Intruder, Lizard 515. He and his pilot had been flying circles over their carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln, giving fuel when required, when they noticed that their left-hand outboard drop tank was stubbornly refusing to feed its fuel up into the wing. Accordingly, and in line with their procedures, they applied positive and negative Gs in an attempt to encourage the reluctant fuel valve to open. Gallagher felt the familiar sensation of negative G, but then something unusual happened. He felt his head touch the canopy above him. He thought for a moment that he hadn't tightened his straps properly, but before he could work out what was going on, there was a loud bang, followed by a roaring and buffeting as he hit the slipstream. He was confused and disorientated as he was forced back into his seat, his head against the headrest and his arms flailing behind him. Trying to work out what had happened, all sorts of thoughts rushed through his imagination. Did the windscreen give way? Did the canopy blow off? Did he eject? Amid the pandemonium that was going on in his mind and all around him, he looked down at a sight that was almost impossible to understand. Keith Gallagher was looking down at the top of the intruder's canopy, close enough to touch, through which he could see the top of his pilot's helmet. He was in a dire situation. His helmet and mask had been ripped off, and the full force of the slipstream was in his face, making it almost impossible to breathe. He managed to drag his arms forward, and he held them into his chest, trying to keep them there. Still trying to grab a breath, he decided the best thing was to complete the ejection sequence. So he reached down and pulled the ejector seat pan handle, but it wouldn't budge, and he couldn't get his hands up to the top handle against the strength of the wind that was battering him. Below him in the cockpit, Keith's pilot was putting out a mayday call and requesting permission to land back on the carrier. The air boss told him to bring it on in and asked if his bombardier was still with him. He replied that only his legs were still in the aircraft. Up above him, Gallagher was having a terrible time of it. The wind was overwhelming him, both physically and mentally, pounding at him like a huge wall of water that wouldn't stop. He couldn't catch his breath or see, and time stood still as he was suffocating. As he blacked out, his last thoughts were of his wife, and he thought to himself, "I don't want to die." Setting up for his approach and landing, Keith's pilot didn't want to risk missing the wire, so he touched down just short of the number 1 wire, and as the aircraft shuddered to a halt, he closed the throttles. He looked up at the hole in the perspex and the jagged canopy shards that were right in front of his bombardier's chest, and said a silent prayer that he wasn't impaled on them. As the deck crew gathered around, it became clear just how lucky Keith Gallagher had been. His parachute had deployed and wrapped itself around the tail of the intruder, and his seat straps had been released, so the only thing holding him in place was his parachute harness. After recovering in hospital, Keith wrote to his old shipmates to thank them, telling the story of his recuperation. Half of his right arm had been paralyzed due to stretched nerves in the shoulder, and his left arm was injured as well. It was thought that his arms had become dislocated and that they popped back in during the landing. It took a while for all the damage and swelling to calm down, but after much physical therapy, he recovered and flew again, 6 months to the day after his terrifying ordeal. Most ejections occur in the air, but for Navy pilots, there's always the chance that they might have to use their ejector seats underwater. But only a handful of pilots have ever attempted such a thing, let alone survived it. Russ Pearson was one such pilot who had been training for his initial carrier qualifications at night off the coast of California. It had been a long, grueling day as he lined up his A7 Corsair II with the meatball optical guidance system on the deck of the USS Constellation. As he threw his aircraft down onto the deck, he caught the 3-wire for what felt like a perfect landing, but all was not well. He had let his A7 drift a little left of the ideal lineup, and as the wire pulled him to a grinding halt, he was dangerously close to the left edge of the deck. He felt a hard jolt as his left main gear slipped off the edge of the deck, and in less than a heartbeat, the plane was precariously perched above the inky black water. Russ shut down his engine, and as the generator wound down, the cockpit fell into darkness. All was quiet, but he knew he was in serious trouble. Then the momentary stillness was shattered as the aircraft lunged forwards. The tailhook had parted company with the arresting cable, and the aircraft tumbled off the flight deck, plunging down 60 feet before impacting with the water. It was like falling down a black hole. Navy survival training is second to none, so Russ knew he had about 10 seconds before his aircraft sank below 100 feet. Few pilots ever come back from there. An underwater ejection was the only option and was theoretically possible in the A7, but no one had ever tested it. There was also the chance he might eject directly into the carrier's hull that was passing overhead, or even worse, into one of her massive propellers. The odds for survival were grim and getting worse every second. Russ waited, trying to judge when the ship would be clear, and then he reached down and pulled the seat pan ejection handle. Nothing happened. During stressful moments, time does funny things, and the millisecond delay seemed to take forever, and Russ imagined himself sinking into the depths, trapped in a multi-million-dollar coffin. But then there was a blinding flash of light. The rocket motor had fired, and in an instant he was out of the cockpit and clear of the seat, although still well below the surface of the cold, dark water. He couldn't breathe as his mask was down below his chin, and in the darkness he had no idea which way was up. It was like he had been shot from a cannon into a pool of jet-black ink. In less than a minute, he had gone from being a cocky, self-assured carrier pilot to a desperate young 25-year-old fighting for his life. Just then, he caught sight of lights above him. The deck crew had thrown illuminated wands over the side to mark the aircraft's position, so in the nick of time, Russ started swimming towards them. As he surfaced, he grabbed lungs full of sweet air, but it was then that he felt an excruciating pain in his back. What's more, he was also being pulled back under the surface by his parachute, which was still attached to his harness and acting like a huge sea anchor, and it was winning. As if this wasn't enough, he felt some vast thing come up from the depths and brush against him. Relief passed through his mind as he realized that, nearly empty of fuel, his A7 had bobbed back to the surface and was helping to support him. Hanging on, he eventually managed to find the inflation toggles of his life vest that had been wrenched around to the side of his body during the ejection and inflate his vest. Then he found the cock fasteners that connected him to his parachute, and in an instant, the drag was gone. It didn't take long for the search and rescue helicopter to find him, and for once he started to appreciate the homely, wind-blowing, water-churning contraption that now looked like an angel of mercy. Nothing could have been more beautiful. Before long, he had been stretchered into the ship's sickbay, where he found out what the pain had been. Russ had broken his back. The medical officer wanted to get the injured pilot to a shore hospital as soon as possible, but the medevac helicopter had room for only one, and a casualty from the flight deck was a more urgent case, so Russ lay back, waiting. About an hour later, a young corpsman came running into the ward. He was out of breath. Word just came down from Air Ops that the medevac flight had engine problems and went down in the water about halfway to the beach. The crew got off a mayday, and another search and rescue helicopter found the wreckage right away, but there were no survivors, not even the doctor. Naval aviation had turned out to be as dangerous as it was glamorous. In 3 short days, Russ Pearson had cheated death twice.
Wow.
You keep
What a
outdoing
story.
yourself, Nick. Wow.
Seriously.
Who'd be a bear or a Navy pilot? I think
I feel sorry
probably
for the
something
bear.
to avoid. Yeah, so do I. I mean, you're punched out of a hustler. You probably don't get much pay. You survive, only to have the medics do you in at the last moment. I think that's very
Exactly.
unfair.
Hmm.
Very
Yeah.
unfair.
I mean, if you survive the ejection,
Very
just
unfair.
leave the bear alone. Come.
Yeah, I think nowadays we've got test dummies, don't we? Crash test dummies to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I feel a bit
Used to be
sorry for
those
the bears.
Used to be those ejection seats were just a bear.
Oh, very good. But I noticed on their little scoreboard they put up that there were some monkeys too. They didn't mention the monkeys. So,
Well, they're monkeys. Yeah. Come on, they're not cuddly bears. Okay, boo boo.
Okay, boo boo.
Hey, boo.
Look at the picnic basket.
I love that cartoon. Oh yeah, that was
but
good
now
stuff.
we know
So,
why-
Yeah, making a
now we know why it
appearance in there.
stopped.
yeah, and that last one was interesting. Ejecting from under the water. I'm thinking, well, that's not going to work.
I
Well,
never thought that
apparent-
was that was even an option. I never realized that was possible.
I don't know about your Navy, but I've spoken to some of our guys who flew with the Navy, and some aircraft that didn't have ejector seats had a sort of underwater equivalent that would help them get free. But I understood it was a last-ditch maneuver. It was, it was a thing guys were taught to attempt, but the ejector seat manufacturers said, well, it's not designed to do that, so you do it at your own risk.
Yeah, it might work.
Yeah.
Give it
Still
a
thinking
try.
about that.
And in this case, it did. Huh?
Yeah,
Well, man.
that's awesome.
Still thinking about that
And
Mach
Micah-
1 ejection. Like, oh my gosh, that relative win.
Yeah, Mike, I was saying and I was going to bring this up just now. Micah says the B-58, it was an ejection capsule, not just an ejection seat. That's why they were testing it with bears to make sure that the capsule closed around the occupant. And that was a really interesting.
Yeah,
concept
actually, there's
there.
some really good videos on YouTube about that.
Yeah.
If anyone's
I've seen
vaguely
that.
interested, and
Yeah.
we actually saw the real thing at the USAF museum. Alongside the Hustler was that ejector seat pod,
And the dead bear right next to it.
and a half-eaten picnic basket.
All right. Well, keep up the great work on those plain tales, Nick.
Thanks,
They're,
sir.
really are the best part of the show. All right. Well, under 40 minutes remaining in our flight, ladies and gentlemen. So I think we should continue to move on and try to knock out some of this feedback. So let's resume with item 3 from Rob. Hello from Down Under. Hi, Captain Jeff, the APG crew, and community. A fairly new listener, but syndrome-inflicted, rusty private pilot from New Zealand here. I first came across your entertaining and informative podcast around the 400th episode and have been hooked ever since. Yes, got another one.
Hey,
You have
it's
made my...
infectious.
Yes, it is.
It is.
You have made my daily commutes and fitness runs so much more entertaining. A couple of episodes back, you were replying to some feedback regarding the differences between flying commercially and flying for the military. You mentioned that your military flying took you to so many countries you would never have visited, one of which was New Zealand. At a guess, I wondered if you may have flown the C-141 to Christchurch, my home city, which is beautiful, by the way, but I've never been there, to support the U.S. Operation Deep Freeze. We had a supply base for the U.S. Antarctic program here for many years and loved to watch the ski-equipped Hercules, C-141 Starlifters, and the occasional Galaxy fly in and out of the city. My girlfriend at the time worked with the wife of one of the Americans stationed at the base, and knowing I was an aviation enthusiast, geek, was able to give us a guided tour of the C-141 one evening. See attached photo. A real thrill at the time, early 1980s. That's actually when I was flying the Starlifter, the early 80s. We were even invited to a hangar hoedown. This consisted of hay bales, county music, and should be country.
Country.
Yeah,
Country music.
music.
Country.
I'm thinking, what's county music?
It's like
Irish,
it's like
right?
country music, but small,
But it's
more
from
local.
Ireland.
It's regional.
Regional.
Yeah. Okay. This consisted of hay bales, country music, and copious amounts of Budweiser. Quite a novelty for us Kiwis. I still remember the headache. The jury is out on the beer. Yeah.
Yeah.
We agree.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like see previous episode about Foster's beer and
Yeah.
American
Last
Steel
episode,
about
yeah.
Budweiser.
Right.
Yeah.
Foster's ABG for beer.
Mhm.
That was the title last episode. Hey, just to let you know, our squadron at Travis Air Force Base was flying that mission, Operation Deep Freeze. However, I was still pretty new to the squadron, and you had to be one of the people that have been around for a while, and you had to know the right people, to be involved in that particular mission. So unfortunately, I never got a chance to get down to Christchurch and do any of that kind of flying. I just wasn't there long enough. But when I referred to New Zealand, it was on a special mission that landed at a Royal New Zealand Air Force Base just north of or near Auckland. And that's we picked up a top secret Navy boat and some SEALs and took them from Auckland, New Zealand. Yeah. Dang it. I always forget. Don't say that word, Jeff. Don't say it. But thank you.
I knew it was coming too. Yeah.
I should have thought about that. So from Auckland to Brisbane, and then Brisbane to Darwin, and then Darwin to QB Point in the Philippines, and then ultimately to that's where we dropped the Navy folks off, and then up to Clark Air Base, just up the road.
John says it's when you're happy.
When you happy. Oh yeah, that is it. I didn't want to even attempt pronouncing it, but that is exactly the base that we flew into.
I believe it's actually pronounced vanilla pie.
Huh? It probably is.
Well, I called it when you're happy, but John will tell us if I'm correct. I think it's pronounced vanilla pie.
Or Glenn will. I don't know if Glenn's with us today, but he'll send us some email probably about it too.
Oh, absolutely.
Audio feedback with proper
Yeah,
pronunciation.
I'm afraid I only got into Ohakia, which was the fighter base, but I love the country. I mean, I flew around a bit while we were in there, but I loved it. Great.
Okay, there's the pronunciation there, Nick, for you.
Whenua pie.
Whenua pie. Actually,
that wasn't
not so bad. So the WH is pronounced with an F. Okay. New Zealand,
English.
Kiwis, crazy people.
I think it's a Maori name, probably.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Let's see. Let's continue. My girlfriend. Okay, I think we already did that.
I think you're right there.
Yeah, last year the previously mentioned girlfriend, now long-term wife, finally managed to tick off Oshkosh on our bucket list. Wish I'd known about you guys then. It would have been great to have met you all in person. Yeah, it would have been.
Yeah, it would have been.
It was a good time. We met all kinds of great people and some others. I'd send you a current photo, but to be honest, we haven't changed a bit. Right. Sure you haven't.
I'm looking at the seats.
Yeah, but do they have a current
cockpit.
picture of themselves in a C-141? So
Yeah. It looks a bit garish, those seats. You sure this was a military airplane?
Yeah, I was about to say. It looks like they got off a
I really
70s couch. Or
I don't
something.
remember those at all. I don't. The 141Bs that I flew did not have seats like that.
Yeah,
that's because that's not a
someone
141.
reupholstered.
What is it, Rick?
That's a 747-100. But
There you go.
but not all 747s have those seats. I've seen those before.
Oh, come on, Rick.
No,
you fly with that kind of seat all the time, don't you?
Oh, I do. Well, but I do. But I bring my own.
Your own seat cover.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
Jeff's been sitting there naked again.
I love it.
Exactly. Let's spice it up. No, but that's a 7.4, unmistakable. Yeah.
All right. Liz is telling me only half an hour to go on our show. We need to hurry here. Let me end this one. Hope you have clear skies and tailwinds. If any of you ever make it this far south, I would love to introduce you to some superb, locally brewed IPAs. Actually, some of the best in the world.
Nice.
You're so modest.
Oh, they are. They really are.
Take care and keep the blue side up. Best regards, Rob. And Rob, I'm sure you look exactly as you do in this photo, this handsome photo with an awesome mustache and a
Yeah, 1970s haircut.
It'll make it
Yeah.
easy to pick 'em out when
Bell-bottom
we
pants and
go to
platform
visit.
shoes and all. Great.
Afro, the whole 9 yards.
Yep.
groovy, man.
Groovy.
Item 4, Chris writes in. This is Chris, the guru. He likes to call himself. We do too. At the end of last year, I started working with the Alabama Community College system, supporting our system-wide enterprise applications. That's IT stuff. I saw a flight instructor job posted at one of our colleges that I wanted to pass along for you to share. With all the challenges in the aviation industry, I figured someone in our community might see this as a great opportunity. The application deadline is July 24th, so you don't have a lot of time. Hopefully, I'll
9 days.
by the time this is published, probably only have about 5 or 6 days. So hurry. The link will be in the show notes, ITSN. I hope you are all doing well. Take care and God bless. Thank you, Chris. We are, and thanks for sending that in. And hopefully somebody out there, or perhaps somebody out there in Northern Alabama might be interested in this job. All right, we're going to skip to item 9. And this is a good one. This is from Conductor Will.
All aboard!
It's just been a few weeks now since I discovered your show. I've never been much of a talk show podcast person. My first thought when I saw the shows are 3 hours long is, there's no way I can listen to this. And after listening, yes, you're right. No, he says, especially if my drive to and from work is only an hour each way. Well, I find myself hooked on the show now, and I'm going back and listening to old episodes to fill the remaining 5 hours of my weekly commute time. Oh no, it sounds like he has the syndrome. Bad case, APG syndrome. And what do most people do? They scream. APG syndrome. Like this guy. We're still working on some kind of a vaccine or protocol.
Yeah, having go around insulin is a little bit of a, holds you over. Some side effects.
Not to mention that the company making the pharmaceutical is in China and been having some issues with that. So anyway, let's see. Since you'll be traveling across country by train soon, I figured I should say hi. Hi. I work for a major intercity passenger railroad, he says, Acme Track, as a conductor or the captain of the cars. I hope you have a great trip and wanted to recommend a fantastic website to track the route and progress of your trains. And then he gave me a link for that. And there is a ton of useful information on there. Just about everything you click opens up more information about the trains and the stations.
Yeah, I was actually just looking at it. It's pretty interesting. Click on there, tell you how they're going to be at each station and where they're currently at, how fast they're going.
Excellent.
Yeah, pretty neat.
I'll definitely be referring to it. Thank you.
Is that
like the
speed
flight
getting to
radar.
double digits?
I know. It's like Flight Radar 24 for trains.
For trains, yeah.
Train radar.
Let's see. You're going to try to show it to people?
It looks like that.
Oh, cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Okay. Well, thank you. He says, if you have any questions during your trip, feel free to drop me a line. I might just do that. Conductor
Where
line.
is the free beer on the train?
Yeah, where is the free beer?
Yeah.
Okay. All aboard.
Apparently the train from Miami to Havana is not running right now. So
Yeah, the bridge is out.
Yeah, the bridge is out.
Okay. Item 11. This is from John Padua. Let's see. Hello, Captain Jeff and the APG crew. My name is John. I'm a relatively new listener to the show. Started around episode 395 or so. I am also a 6-month new hire first officer on the Embraer 175 for a regional airline in the U.S. Something that has been on my mind, apart from my job being on the line come October 1st, is how to deal with those so-called, quote, trouble captains. I am proud to say that 99.9% of the captains I've flown with have been nothing short of fantastic. However, it's the other 0.1%, isn't that always the case?
It's always the case.
That every company has that make for a few not so enjoyable times on the flight deck. While I haven't had any major conflicts or crew resource management breakdowns with these captains, I have observed a few strange and uncomfortable moments. These have ranged from minor, yet noticeable, deviations from our company's standard operating procedures to chewing out a gate agent for not closing the boarding door 10 minutes early so he could, quote, drop the parking brake and start the payment clock. I never talked to him about that, as I probably should have. One moment that stood out was when a captain disagreed with me for using a SOP, standard operating procedure approved technique with the FMS flight management system. Even after he asked me to show him where in the SOP this technique was, he still insisted I use a different technique of his that he determined or deemed was more professional. Yeah, that's professional for sure. While I've received wisdom and advice from others about this, I wanted to get your thoughts on this topic. How did you deal with these types of captains as first officers? How did you find your voice as first officer on the flight deck when it was needed? How do you as captains make for an open environment for your FOs and crew to feel comfortable and able to speak up? I think other listeners who work in and are new to multi-crew environments would benefit from hearing from your experience. And then he added a PS, Captain Jeff, I find it really cool that you used to run a podcast called The Catholic Pilot and talk about your involvement with your church every so often. As a Catholic myself, it's refreshing to hear a fellow pilot express their faith in an environment where it seems, or sometimes is seen as taboo. Sincerely, John Padua. And
Jeff, I think we should just tell this guy to shut up and move on.
Yeah. Well, who put this piece of garbage feedback in the folder? Liz, you're fired. Yeah. No.
Actually, I was gonna ask first. Have you, John? Have you watched the most recent installment of the Living the Dream YouTube videos where they have the 4-day bunch of captains? That's pretty.
I don't think
classic.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's good. It's worth watching. If you haven't watched it yet, definitely check that out. I think you'll sympathize a little bit with, yeah.
Was it Len Morgan? I think he's rest in peace. Was a longtime airline pilot that used to have a column at the back of the flying magazine called Vectors, and he had a great column on this particular subject as well, and kind of broke down like 3 or 4 different, traditional stereotyped captains, the outdoorsman and the farmer and the this and that, so it's kind of cute. But he did talk about the difficulty and frustration and whatever of being a first officer, and how to be successful, a lot of times you just have to be a chameleon and try to adapt to that particular personality. But luckily, back in the day, that was a lot more of an issue. Nowadays, mostly, as you said in his feedback, John did, that 99.9% of us are standardized and are decent people to fly with. But
just the other 0.1%.
We have the obviously John is asking from the captain's perspective, but we could also ask somebody from a first officer's perspective. Or do you want us to start first?
I'll say a couple things. I know when you're brand new, especially if you've never flown a jet before, you kind of have that you're a little intimidated to begin with, because the first time you're actually flying the plane is with people on board. So your first couple of flights that you're with a check airman and everything, but even then it's that intimidation factor and everything, especially your first 100 hours, you kind of don't feel like you can speak up or say anything because you're still learning and everything. But after a couple 100 hours, you start getting more confident and know how things are supposed to go. So that's kind of when you start finding your voice, as he was saying. I know it's not easy sometimes to deal with people. That's really the hardest thing about the job, I think, is dealing with people's different personalities and their leadership style, if you want to call
He's
it
using
that.
air quotes, by the way, when he said leadership style.
But because some captains, they're they're kind of like Rick, just make sure you're stable before 1,000 feet so we don't have to go around, and follow SOP. And then the worst thing you can generally hear is when you first sit down with them up front is, hey, I'm just strictly SOP. That's usually your first indication that you need to start paying attention. And that's really what it comes down to, is paying attention to, are they doing things right? Are you, if it's different, you need to ask questions, especially if it's something that's unsafe. And that's a really hard thing to do. And just from my experience, unless it's going to jeopardize the aircraft or the people, it's sometimes best to wait to get on the ground and park at the gate before you bring it up, because you do not know how the other person is going to react to it.
Yeah, that's good advice.
I've had conversation go south before, and it was a very uncomfortable 30-minute flight back up to Atlanta. So just
not to mention that it's somewhat dangerous.
It is, because you don't know what the other guy's going to do. You're both going to get distracted. Things can happen. But yeah, and then the one other thing I'll say, just pick the hill you want to die on. If it's something minor, just maybe mention it. But if it's just the way that he's doing something different that you've seen before, maybe you haven't seen before, but it's not going to jeopardize something, just pick the hill you're going to die on.
Suck it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Rick, you're a new captain. A born again captain.
I'm a born again.
You've been a captain before. I should make sure. I wanted to clarify. It's not your first rodeo.
No, and I mean, I agree with everything you just said there. You do need to. You said it perfectly. Pick the hill you want to die on. You got to pick your battles, because at the end of the day, you are moving through the air at 8 miles a minute, and so sometimes that's not the best time to bring something up. As far as a couple of things I could add, being an FO, I can say this politely here.
Don't just say it, just blunt.
Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes you just kind of have to. Sometimes you just kind of have to push back a little bit as well, because you are sitting there because you are qualified to sit there. You're not just you're just not an accessory to the cockpit. You are a qualified type-rated member of the crew, and if you weren't, you wouldn't be sitting there. So obviously, I understand how starting out and your first 100 hours and all that stuff, obviously you're there more you're not there in a learning capacity, because all you have to learn you learned on InDoc and all that, but you are still your learning curve still a little steeper than others, because you just started
knowledge that you're learning.
Exactly right. But what I'm saying here is that sometimes captains pick up on this, and you see a high employee number, for example, and you go, oh, this guy hasn't been around for that long, and so that's going to put the captain in a that might, depending on the personality of the guy or the gal, might make them a bit more abrasive towards you, because they don't respect you as much, because you haven't been there as long. And really all it takes is, as long as you are in the right and you are just professional, and if you find a little bit of push back, just make sure the other guy or the other person knows that you're not a pushover, and you just got to be, you have to, because we as pilots, we're all type A personalities. And sometimes all it takes is a little bit of pushback for the guy to realize, oh shit, I can't push this guy around. So maybe we are equals. Just you are equals indeed. So just act like one. Wear that and understand that you are an equal there. Because if you weren't, you wouldn't be sitting there.
And know that if you're in the right, if it gets to the point where you got to go talk to the chief pilot or whatever, then you can go in there with confidence and say, well,
absolutely right.
And,
absolutely right. And don't be afraid to voice your concerns when things are not right. And also, don't be afraid to take control of the aircraft if you ever find yourself in a position that you have to take control of the aircraft, which I've done.
That's a tough one.
I've done, and it's just it just gets to that point. And you know what? The time I did it, this happened years and years ago. The first time I was an FO, and that was with a very, very senior management type pilot who hadn't been to the old Quito airport. I talk about it a lot because it was a very, very tricky airport to go into. This pilot I was flying with was filling in on a trip, and he hadn't been there. And usually the Quito used to be not really. It wasn't really written that it was a captain only airport, but it was the more challenging of the airports. So usually the captain flew in there, and so this guy went in there, and he got things got a little hairy there, and I made a couple call outs, and he didn't react, he didn't respond, so I had to take over, and I did. And after we landed, he actually thanked me for it. He said, "You know what, you did the right thing, and you know, congratulations for being assertive. And so don't be afraid to take control when you have to, because at the end of the day, I mean, you're up there with them, and if something happens, it's both of you.
Don't suffer from co-pilotitis.
Exactly right.
Steph, did you have something to say?
I think I was going to say about the same thing that you said. Sorry for the thunder in the background there. If you could hear that.
Stormy again?
Yeah, imagine that. That never happens. You know, so similar stuff just in my own career path where you're, talking with people with different levels of experience. But what I was going to say before Jeff jumped in, so the same thing is basically, if it's something you're confident you're in the right on, or if it's something that, like Stephen was saying, is safety critical, that's the time to speak up and not let it be an issue until you get on the ground. So, yeah, it was all the same stuff.
Nick.
It was a bit odd coming from a military background. On the Squadron R, debriefs after a flight would have been considered absolutely brutal in the civil world. Nobody held back. We used to rip each other to shreds, all in the justification of, this could have been war and people would have died because of that mistake. The civil world was quite a transition, but not a bad one. And the wonderful thing about the guys I worked with higher guys, and they were some of the most professional people I had ever met. And to be absolutely truthful, one, perhaps two guys in 25 years of flying rubbed me up the wrong way because they were, one guy could never let you fly the airplane. You had to do it. He was like a talking autopilot. He told you when to do everything.
Yeah, I love those.
Yeah, and another guy was just non-SOP, and he was a trainer. He just did nothing standard.
He was a trainer?
Yeah, absolutely. Which was very frustrating. He would kind of like turn it on and turn it off. So, I suspect when he was doing his sims and check rides and things, he would turn it on.
It was by the book.
Yep, but I know a lot of captains who said, if ever I get that guy as a trainer in my simulator, I'm going sick. And I always found that, as long as you did everything in a nice and easygoing manner and made the cockpit environment one that made it simple for people to bring things up, I was perfectly happy if someone wanted to comment on my flying. No one's perfect at any time during the flight, because I was always very open to that. I often found that some people weren't, and I think it depended on their background, their upbringing. Because I'd been used to having my used to have a new orifice ripped out of me after every flight in the military. I found the civil world just so easy to cope to
so
do.
Much more civil.
Absolutely, very civil in the civil world. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it comes back to professionalism. Everyone's there because they're a professional at what they do. You have to have a culture of mutual respect and, basically mutual trust as well, that the other person's there to do the job they're trained to do. And if that starts to break down, then it gets a little bit tricky. But
absolutely,
like Rick said, that have been offered.
You've both got the same license usually, so it's only a matter of time that puts you in the other seat.
Exactly. I mean, you're on the left because you have the seniority to hold that position. Yeah, there's a little bit more to it than that. But
you ticked a few boxes to get there. But
in essence, that's what it is.
Everyone gets their chance to get in the left seat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I forgot who it was that said, setting the atmosphere of an open environment. I think a true leader is one that in his or her own way, makes it clear that they are in charge of everything, but we still want everyone to participate as a team and, give their input so that we all succeed together. And the ones that throw impediments in the way are the ones that don't succeed. They're not going to have a team that's going to want to support them. And if something does go wrong, they might be just pleased as heck for that to go wrong. Not safety wise, but other like administrative,
personnel wise, administrative
Right.
wise.
Yeah.
So, and I never understood why the people that are like that, they just don't get it. I mean, if you just treated your crew with respect, and you would come out looking and doing so much better. And now,
Oh, absolutely,
it's just like going to be miserable for you. But maybe that's what you like. Misery.
I mean, to me, it makes sense. You want the people that you're working with to like working with you, especially if you're in a leadership position. I mean,
Right.
it doesn't make for a good day
Absolutely.
for anyone if everyone's at each other's throats or afraid to say something because something's not going right or there's a problem. That's just
And we've all been in that position where we look at our schedule and we see that guy and we go, "Oh, we have to fly with that guy."
Yeah.
Yep.
So just don't be that guy.
That's what all
Go.
my first officers do.
like, oh
Just
man,
be my name.
go watch the Living the Dream, the fourth part.
That's
Really
Great
good. That's good.
Excellent. We'll do that.
Yeah, and I'll just say one more thing. When Jeff was scrolling through your feedback, I believe we work at the same Acme Junior carrier, and I know our management staff at the Chicago base is really good about this kind of thing. And if you have an issue with any of the captains, go talk to them. I can't tell you how many times I've been talking to another captain, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I flew with him when I was an FO," and it's a string of things. So they know who our problem people are, and that they're more than happy to hear you out on what's going on because they don't want those guys causing issues.
Yeah. Oh, and if you're flying for an airline such as Acme, that is has a union representing the pilots, we at Acme have a great division or committee called Professional Standards, and it's our way to kind of try to take care of a problem if somebody is unsafe or just a jerk or whatever. You can anonymously contact the Professional Standards representatives, and they can investigate it. And what they do, I've gotten on a couple of occasions calls from somebody from Professional Standards and say, "Hey, Jeff, like about 2-3 weeks ago, you flew with Bob, and what did you think about Bob?" And well, you just wanted to get my opinion about this particular person. And you can be completely honest, and I guess in this case it wouldn't be anonymous because they contacted me, so they knew who I was. But
It's probably more of them just going through who they flew with recently to see.
Yeah.
Mhm.
and
I mean,
but
hopefully they're writing down your commentary as anonymous and
right.
take
Yeah,
all
I don't
that
think there's
information
any
out, so.
threat against you at all. And
Not
if it gets to the
punitive.
point, and if it gets to the point where it really is kind of pushing the safety line, then the Professional Standards will contact the company and work with them and say, "Look, this is a serious issue, and we've tried to deal with it, but it's not doing any good, and this is what you need to be aware of it." And you know what? Guess what? They probably already are. They probably
Yeah.
already have a stack of reports and information about this particular person, and they're just waiting for the right opportunity to ask that person to retire early.
Hey, I retired early.
Well, now we know why.
Yeah, you were.
We were going to keep that all
Unbelievable.
anonymous.
You miserable.
I'm joking. You did it on your own volition, of course.
That's what I told
Yeah,
you.
the chief pilot.
That we're aware of.
That we're aware of. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I think I'm going to be retiring early too. Just something came up. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Don't want to talk
No
about
idea.
No details. Just this time.
it. Yeah. All right. Well, that was a great feedback. Great question. Just quickly, because we were talking about the living the dream thing, and on was it the last episode or the episode before we did the animated video, the Llama Airlines? I think it was.
It was before.
yeah,
Okay.
it
The
was
one
two
before,
ago.
yeah.
Yeah. Let's see if I can find this one. Knock this one out pretty quickly.
Number
Is it another llama?
17.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Richard wrote in and said, I was listening to episode 432 and was amazed to hear the Llama International Airlines video. It's from a channel of a very good friend of mine called Flight Deck 2, numeral 2 Sim. He is a Boeing 737 captain who uses his channel to apply real world procedures to home simulators. It's really good for wannabe pilots or people who want to see how things are done properly. Maybe Dana could do with watching the 737 cold and dark startup video I'll include in this email. Why not give my friend a shout out and get him a few more viewers and subscribers? Okay, so the YouTube link is there. And again, a shout out to Flight Deck 2 Sim. And that will be in the show notes for you to check out. So thank you, Richard, for helping get the word out for your friend. He said, "Wishing clear skies, no COVID-19, and just jobs in aviation. Really, ta-ta for now, Richard." So there you go. Done.
Excellent.
Boom. All right. You know what? I think Liz, probably time to wrap it up. Okay. So all the great feedback that we have here in our feedback notebook will be transferred to the next show's feedback. So if you didn't hear yours, don't worry. We'll get to it eventually. If you want to send feedback to us, you can do that by using our email address, feedback@airlinepilotguy.com. You can go to our website and learn a lot of stuff. I mean, it's just jam-packed with information about the crew and the community and merchandise, the coffee fund, the APG library, run by Tiffany, our APG librarian. Plain Tales has its own page where Captain Nick puts extra information in there and pictures and stuff regarding the Plain Tales episodes that he does every week. And I'm sure there's much more there for you to check out. Oh, and the calendar as well. Check that out. And we're also on the social medias.
We are. You can head over to twitter.com. We're at APG Crew. You can find the same handle on Instagram at APG Crew and Facebook.com/Airline Pilot Guy. Twitter in particular, good place to see when we're going to be recording a live show and if there's any last minute changes to that time or schedule, and everywhere else for lots of good community interaction. So let's see you there on the social medias.
Absolutely. And I don't know, is Hillel, did you see him earlier?
I heard something upstairs.
Yeah, that bathroom that nobody really wants to get anywhere near for some reason. Right? Oh yeah, I can hear it.
Yeah, I hear something.
Hillel, it's time for Slack.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share news and ideas. We suggest episode and Plain Tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com, or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack.
Thanks, Hillel.
Jeff, you've got to try these towels.
Okay.
The towels were actually really nice.
They are nice.
Yeah, they're really nice.
You really do have to try these towels.
Yeah, Hillel
All right.
approves.
Yeah. And also, we a big round of applause again for our producer director in the control room.
Thanks, Liz.
In Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Thank you, Liz. And until next time, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care and God bless.
Cheers, y'all.
See you next time.
Bye, everybody.
See y'all.
Boom.
Nice.
Shakalaka.
Nice. It's like Jeff's running out the door.
Like, I gotta go.
What, was it obvious?
A little bit.
No.
I mean,
Oh,
we got an
yeah.
hour and a half.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
wasn't
you
trying
got
to.
important things to do tonight. Like
Oh, yeah,
meet
But
up
we were right up
slash
against
train
3
ride.
hours. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it
That was
wasn't.
perfect. Yeah. We just had a lot of stuff to talk about for people that
Yeah.
can't monitor and stuff.
All right, let's see. Let me turn these recorders off. Turn off selected blocks.
Block.
Okay. Looks like this time it worked. Are you still hearing me?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
It worked as it's supposed to.
Yeah, we got Jeff at the beginning of the show. Nick and I were really quiet. Jeff was like,
Oh,
"Did you
did
guys hear me?"
He's like,
It was great.
nice.
Yeah,
Sad I missed
because I
that.
just fixed one problem and I'm thinking, now,
Created another one.
what am I doing wrong? I don't hear them.
Isolated my audio. No one can hear.
Yeah, they're a bunch
That's funny.
of scammers
job,
is
guys.
what they are.
It's
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah. Sorry, Armando. He says, of course, as Jeff does. I showed up for the last story. I'm sure it was the best show. It was.
Always.
Should have
Every
been here,
show's the best
Armando.
You really should go back and watch the last week's show. That
Yeah.
was entertaining.
We were drinking
There was
10%
some alcohol consumed.
beer.
Yeah.
We kind of had the giggles, but yeah. But we could have.
I was way too sober for that show. I was like,
You really didn't understand
me
what's
too
so
for a
funny.
change.
yeah, I know, right? Well, Nick actually was drinking. I couldn't drink. I
Yeah.
had stuff to do.
You were just drinking more.
I was trying hard to catch up. I just couldn't.
Oh no,
crack it.
no, they,
I think it was a
No
high
chance.
altitude. That might have
Yeah,
something to do with it.
altitude. and- what
Oh
is
yeah,
it,
where were
the,
you guys? You were
the
in
com- Durango.
Altitude.
Durango.
jet
Yeah,
lag.
yeah.
that'll do it.
That'll do it.
Yep.
Yes. what is
10%
it,
beer and altitude. Good times.
It's what
And like
the
not a lot of food
combination
beforehand.
Yeah, zero food.
Yeah, we should have eaten something.
Yeah. What is it? The combination of alcohol and altitude is not the same as being happy.
It was close.
It's close.
It was very close.
Called hypoxia. Yeah.
But we could have
Is that what
we could have done that on this show, but we're about to head over to a brewery, and I'm thinking, I'll wait until we get over to Ballast
Yeah,
Point. before
I don't
actually
want
have a
to
beer.
ticket.
Yeah, and if you're going to be driving, you can't drink too much. So
That causes issues.
yeah, it tends to. Anyway, well, thanks everybody in the chat room for hanging out with us today. We do appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the show. It's always great when you're here, and you really help out a lot. Most of you, anyway.
Yeah.
Some of you
good
are
job.
more of a hindrance.
Good job. Armando didn't pitch up till right at the end.
I know. For sure.
Oh man, it's like pick on Armando. Sorry, man.
Yeah, when people do that to you, you know that they love you.
Yeah.
We love you.
Absolutely.
See you and Armando. Definitely.
Thanks, Jen. She says, happy train ride. I hope to. I continue. I hope that I'll be able to continue to do little reports on my ride back. Take you all with me, so to speak, in a virtual way. So with that, I'm thinking going to end the broadcast so Rick can eat some breakfast and then go back to bed and get a nap or something. So
That's right.
go to
Yeah. How's that work? What kind of a life is that, Rick?
I know. All
All right.
stuff I do for flying, huh?
Yeah.
Love it.
All right, everybody. See ya. Thanks for hanging out with us
Bye,
today.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye, folks.